On today's event, I'm excited to be joined by Phoenix Snap with Veeam, Nutanix, TierPoint with Zerto, Unitrends, and Cisco with Pure Storage. What a great lineup of presenters we have today. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on today's Cloud Solutions EcoCast. I think that you will really enjoy this presentation today, this event today. So thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your schedule to join us. Before we get started, we've got a little bit of housekeeping that we should first cover. There's a few things that you should know about today's event. First off, my name is David Davis from Actual Tech Media. Today's Cloud Solutions EcoCast is produced by Actual Tech Media, and we at Actual Tech Media created the MegaCast and EcoCast event series to help educate IT professionals such as yourselves about the latest and greatest innovative enterprise technology, and to help you to do it all from the comfort of your home or office, wherever you might be, and to help you do it quickly and efficiently. You never have to go downtown to a conference or convention center or pay for parking or any of that stuff. So thank you for joining us on today's event. I think you're going to learn a lot, and while you do it, you have a chance to win some of our cool prizes that we'll be announcing later in the event as well. Now, each presenter on the event today will speak for roughly 20 minutes, followed by a live 3 to 5 minute Q&A, where I'll take the best questions from you out there in the audience. So let's see, we've got a checklist of things here that you need to be aware of. First off, prizes. I'll talk about how the prizes work and what the prizes are in the next couple of slides. Questions. I said we want questions from you. We want this to be an educational event. We created this for you, and we want your questions. What do you want to learn about on today's event? What questions do you have about today's presentations? You'll want to use the questions and answers box there in your audience console to ask those questions, and I'll be answering those questions as best I can. And if there are technical questions about the presentations, I'll be holding those till the end of each of the respective presenters' presentation slots, and then I'll be posing those questions to today's presenters. So we need your questions. We need some good questions. So keep those questions coming in throughout the presentations. And sometimes we get so many questions we can't answer them all, and in that case we try to get back to each of those attendees after the event, and we do our best to do that. So I also have some questions for you. I'll be asking you a number of poll questions throughout the event. In fact, here in just a minute before our first presentation, I've got 3 poll questions for you. And usually I share the results of those poll questions with you so you can see how you stack up with your peers on this event today. And there are hundreds and hundreds of you on today's event, so we're going to get some good statistics here to share with you. I think that information will be very valuable. Also, social. We want this to be a social event. Of course, I appreciate everyone saying hello. You know, hello from Michigan, Louisiana, North Carolina, New Jersey. Thank you, everyone, for saying that and posting that. We also are going to be doing some social over on Twitter and on LinkedIn as well, and I'll talk more about those social activities in just a moment. But if you go to the bottom of your audience console there's a Twitter icon. If you click on that, you can tweet directly from the console. It's kind of cool. You never have to go out to your Twitter client to do that. And the hashtag for today's event will be automatically appended, which is Cloud EcoCast, and I've got another slide coming up on that in just a minute. Also, at the top of your audience console there are 3 icons for Actual Tech Media's social channels, our LinkedIn, our Twitter, and our YouTube channel. We've been doing a lot with those lately, so feel free to click on those icons and check out those social channels. We've got tons of video content over on YouTube, and on LinkedIn, we've been posting a ton of content lately, so I think that you'll find that content valuable. And then finally, resources. We've got a Handouts tab, and on that Handouts tab, there are a number of PDFs and links to resources that today's presenters have recommended. So make sure you check out that Handouts tab. Now, we have 4 $500 Amazon gift cards to give out on today's event, and we'll be giving those out after each presentation, starting with the second presentation slot. Now, the requirements to be eligible for those drawings must be met. There's always legalese prize terms and conditions around any sort of prize drawings. Grand prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and you can find full prize terms and conditions on our website, events.actualtechmedia.com. And you can actually go to the Handouts tab, and you'll see that link there as well, and you can just click on that, and that'll bring up the prize terms and conditions if you are interested. Of course, you must be live on the event to be eligible for the prize drawings. Now, through the MegaCast and EcoCast event series, we've given out thousands of dollars to charities, the selected charities you see here on the screen. And if you are a lucky prize winner and want to give out your prize value to charity, we would love to help you do that. So if you do, thank you in advance. Now, the hashtag for today's event is Cloud EcoCast over on Twitter. I'll be tweeting about the event. I hope that you will too. You can follow Actual Tech Media, and you can follow me as well, David M. Davis, over on Twitter. And I look forward to chatting with you about the event there as well. Like I said, we've been doing a lot on LinkedIn as well. You can visit us on LinkedIn and follow us there. We've been posting a lot of great content lately, interviews, real-time live streams from trade shows, things like that. So make sure that you check those out. Now, before we jump into our first presentation, and actually before we do some poll questions, I've got a few kind of introductory stage setting slides here. And the first one, I want to point out that there are many different benefits of cloud solutions. And when we talk about cloud solutions, I know it's a very general kind of topic. You know, exactly what are cloud solutions? They mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And that's why I want to do a little bit of kind of level setting here. And so when we talk about cloud, there are a number of benefits. And the first one that I think about is this sort of infinite scalability. You can run, you know, as many applications and as many workloads and store as much data as you want in the cloud, public cloud offerings, because they seem to have this infinite scalability, right? And that's one of the benefits over our on-premises data centers. We don't typically have infinite scalability because we have to go out and purchase some new hardware to do that. The cloud just seems to have this infinite hardware standing by, ready for us to consume and, of course, pay for as we do it. The cloud also offers us business and IT agility. So if, for example, say you don't have disaster recovery at this point and you need to implement disaster recovery at your company, well, the cloud allows us, different cloud solutions like you'll learn about today, allow us to very quickly bring up disaster recovery, where in the past we might have to rent out a co-location data center or use one of our existing sites and get identical equipment over there, identical storage and servers, and then do replication of our data, maybe increase our bandwidth, things like that can be accomplished very easily with cloud solutions. And that's just one example. Cloud solutions are also typically very elastic. Like I talked about, you have this infinite scalability, but you can also shrink down as you don't need that capacity anymore. And of course, just pay for what you consume. And that's the pay-as-you-go or utility-based pricing. So you don't have to purchase servers and storage, for example, for disaster recovery with a large capital expenditure purchase. You simply pay pennies, for example, based on whatever you consume. And then there's either no CapEx or low CapEx. We talked about that. And then in most cases, advanced features are included. For example, you'll hear about today from Nutanix, their desktop as a service offering. So, that's just one example of many cloud solutions that have advanced features included where I don't have to purchase a VDI broker. I don't have to purchase software, set up servers, and things like that. I can just consume desktops in the cloud as I need to. And the end result here, hopefully, is that these cloud solutions can help make us in IT much more efficient, right? We can do things that we never dreamed of before. In a few clicks, you can bring up a massive new server in the cloud or a new application in the cloud and make us, kind of the tech heroes instead of having to say no or be the IT department of no like we might have had to do in the past. We're able to do some really cool things. And this gives us not only, a lot of benefits on IT, but also a lot of benefits to our company. It makes our company so much more agile, perhaps more competitive, in the industry because we can consume technology and leverage technology faster and easier and at a lower cost than ever before in the past. So there's a lot of different types of cloud solutions. As I talked about, you have cloud-based data protection. You'll hear about those today from Zerto and Veeam and TierPoint and Phoenix Snap and Unitrends. There's disaster recovery as a service, which also comes from those types of providers that I just mentioned. Cloud migration, desktop as a service. You'll learn about that today from Nutanix. Cloud-enabled storage solutions, and artificial intelligence and private or hybrid cloud solutions like you'll see today from Cisco and Pure Storage. So we've got a lot of really cool presentations. I've seen them all today, and I can tell you, you have a lot to look forward to. So again, I appreciate you joining us on today's event, and I appreciate you sticking with us as long as possible, hopefully all through to the end, because we've got a great show lined up for you today. Now, before I introduce our first set of presenters, we have 3 poll questions for you. The first question is on the screen, and it says, what is your industry vertical? And I'll just leave that on the screen there for everyone to answer. Now, this is kind of a long set of answers here, and you may need to scroll down on the right-hand side using the slider there to go up and down to see all of the answers. And this is actually a good time, if you haven't already, to resize that slides window. You can click maximize on it to fill up your browser, or you can just take the corner of it and you can mouse over and click and drag it out and make it as large as possible while you still have the questions and answers box there on your screen. So that's kind of the cool thing about this platform is you can resize these windows however you'd like. And it looks like most everyone has answered that. I really appreciate those answers, and I'm going to share the results of that right now, and let's see who's on today's event. So we have 23% from technology companies. Thank you very much for joining. 15% healthcare, very nice. Thank you. 7% manufacturing, 6% higher education. And if you add up the, K-12, local government, state, federal, higher education, it's a good percentage there. Thank you. 10% finance and banking, 4% law, 4% nonprofit. Really good statistics. Thank you, everyone who answered that poll question. Now, here's another question for you. How many people work at your company? And this should be a pretty easy, quick one to answer. I'll share the results of this with you in just a moment. And while you're answering that, I want to point out if anyone has any technical problems during the event, 99% of the time, if you simply press refresh on your browser, that will resolve any technical problems. It's just like a reboot on your computer. If you have a problem and a refresh does not resolve it, then you can simply post your question in the questions and answers box there, and I will do my best to help out. All right, looks like most everyone has voted on that poll. And take a look at the results. 22% are from medium-sized companies, 100 to 500 employees. 14% are 10,000 plus. 14% 500 to 1,000, and 12% 1,000 to 2,500, all the way down to 9% at small companies. So thank you, everyone. Got a good representation of all different sizes of companies on the event today. All right, last poll question before I introduce the first presenters. And that is, what's your time frame for updating your existing or selecting new cloud solutions? All right, looks like most everyone has voted on that. Again, I appreciate your responses. And with that, it's time to get started. I'm excited to introduce the first presenters on today's Cloud Solutions EcoCast. First off, Mr. Ian McClarty, President of Phoenix Snap, and Mr. Rick Vanover, Director of Technical Product Marketing at Veeam. Ian, take it away.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Ian McClarty. I'm President of Phoenix Snap. What I'm going to be covering today is protecting the cloud, the multi-cloud. We're going to go over some security and compliance best practices. This is not a product pitch, but I do need to give some context around who we are, since we're a little bit lesser known. So who is Phoenix Snap? Well, we've been around for about 10 years now in operations. We're really focused on infrastructure as a service as a company. That is really our core is infrastructure as a service. Even though we do an own and operate a nice facility in the Phoenix metro region, we have over 500 employees worldwide. We really run a true follow the sun model in all of our products. And then we also have 10 plus global data center locations. We're actually getting closer to about 15 global data center locations at this point. We do have headquarters physically in Phoenix, Arizona, as well as Amsterdam, Netherlands. And we've won a couple of Veeam awards. So we really embrace the disaster recovery and backup and recovery message, really follow the 3-2-1 rules that are out there from Veeam. And we've been inside the Veeam ecosystem for many years now. And a couple of years ago, we won a nice Rising Star Award, and then last year we won a Innovation Partner Award for some of the integration work that we did with the control panel and Veeam to make it more easily for resellers actually to deploy services to their end clients. And again, we are also a very channel-friendly company too. We won an award last year from CRN. So just a little bit of our footprint, just a little high level here. Plenty of network maps there showing connectivity. So we run a really nice tier 2 backbone at this point, heavily interconnected. We don't focus on just peering traffic off. We actually focus on what are the best carriers per region. So for example, in Singapore, we have NTT, we have Tata. NTT support the Japanese market, Tata to support the Indian market. We have Telstra for the Australian and just general market in some of the lesser regions. And we also have PCCW for China telecom routes that are China light. So we have a pretty good mix, but we don't focus on just going down to the bottom of the cost basis. We focus on really good peering connectivity and direct tier 1 providers, and that's really what our tier 1 backbone provides on that, and it's all interconnected as well. We also do DDoS mitigation at the edge, which is also different. So most infrastructure companies at our level, they are not offering DDoS mitigation for free. We do that up to 20 gigs per instance per system, and we have been developing edge mitigation now in some intellectual property since almost the beginning of the company. A couple of our solutions here from a high level. So we have co-location, dedicated servers, cloud services, security services, backup and disaster recovery. So one thing to note, we are not a managed services company. What we provide to clients is infrastructure services. We basically give you a bunch of Lego building blocks, give you easy ways to implement, and we manage the back-end infrastructure. So if I'm giving you, say, a cloud solution, it's really a VMware stack, all in OpEx model. We do all of the VMware management, patching. We do all the hardware replacement. We do all the scale out for it. And we do that in a simple contractual way for you, so that you are only basically just doing a couple different line items, and then we translate that out to scale out on our end. So that whole infinite scalability, we provide parts of that, but it always comes with a caveat. And even with like AWS and Azure, it isn't a true infinite scalability. You can do dedicated resources and pay a premium for that. So the better that you know your workloads and what that's actually going into your cloud, the better you can actually leverage your cost basis and negotiate that. We do a lot of dedicated systems, which is also different than most of the IaaS providers. That's actually a version of I wouldn't say anti-cloud, but it's another way to skin the cat. Really, it's going after more of a Kubernetes, container type environment in the future. We're putting a lot of API implementation into that and a lot of automation as well, orchestration. We continue making investments in that product line, since there is a subset of AWS clients, Azure clients that do migrate out of services once they do figure out, hey, there has to be another way to lower my cost basis for bandwidth, for scale out storage, for scale out compute. But I don't necessarily want to own and operate anymore. I like what AWS provided from that perspective, but I need to find a solution that is more cost controlled, and we offer that with dedicated systems that are going more API focused. And again, we do co-location all over the world as well. There are plenty of still legacy apps that exist in the market today that are not in the cloud. There is that progression to cloud, but it hasn't really happened for many companies. That's one of the reasons why we're also talking about best business practices around security services, because it truly is a multi-cloud environment. Even with the product mix that we have today, there's very much of a legacy app to in the cloud, to direct connectivity back to AWS and Azure. It's really a very mishmash system. And then our security services are really we're not a MSSP either. We are focusing on adding more security and compliance systems and services around all of our product lines. So we do co-location, dedicated servers, and cloud services. And backup and disaster recovery are really a bolt-on to all these different product lines. I mean, they are the last lifeline for a breach, really, and that's how we see the backup and recovery market. So multi-cloud use and priorities. Again, I kind of touched on this a little bit, but today most organizations are running some, a mix and match of private, public, co-location. They're experimenting with next generation workloads. The one thing that we're also that a lot of people don't talk about is software as a service. So there are a lot of companies that have moved over to software as a service, platform as a service offerings as part of their ecosystem as well. And there are some difficulties with that. It's wonderful from like a end user perspective, easy to manage. You have all your data easily accessible. But what happens when your system goes offline? Which the cloud providers do go offline from time to time. They go under they are attacked. They have just human error, so that happens sometimes. Sometimes just some bad code. There are outages that constantly happen in software as a service models and platform as a service models. And it's great that you have your data, but you are not up and running. So there's still a kind of like Achilles heel in all this nirvana of cloud systems, right? Unless you have a like-to-like product in-house or a like-to-like product that you can launch somewhere else, you're really going to be offline for that service piece that you have. As an example, say Salesforce. Salesforce goes offline. You are basically you're stuck with trying to figure out how do I get my salespeople and how do I actually service clients, get quotes out. And when we find is that you have to put a manual process in place sometimes because the systems just are not there to support the uptime. So we talked a little bit about the really one thing this slide doesn't really encompass. It really talks about like the high level. But to simplify this down, there's more security compliance being distributed out to the especially the ecosystem in the U.S. and Europe. And one of the reasons for that are breaches, security and they do happen. They happen all the time. I mean, this year I was doing an event a couple months ago, and a couple months ago it was about 4,000 breaches that were reported to the market. And we're talking about real breaches here, whether that be a credit card loss or that be compromise of a patient data. These and that's only on the reported side. So there's a lot of subsets of that are not reported, obviously, and because of these breaches that do occur and will continue to occur. I mean, there's even a company that has patching levels and has has all the business practices from a security perspective. There's still zero-day exploits that you need to account for. You cannot get away from them. And these zero-day exploits are causing, and these breaches are causing there to be more and more ecosystem responsibility. Meaning, if I'm in the healthcare field and I'm a hospital, now I'm looking at my janitorial services for HIPAA. Now I'm looking at I may have some data center backup services. Now I'm holding my data center, even though they're not touching my data per se. They may be just providing a DR site for me. I'm still holding them accountable, and I still need to know that they're following HIPAA standards and HIPAA rules. And so that's one thing that we focus on very heavily as an organization. And we're getting that direct feedback from both from the MSSPs that we partner with, and also from the C-level that we speak with. Everybody's seeing this more accountability, and the C-level is also being held accountable. So we find that security companies are also having a lot more of the ear of the C-level because of these reasons. Again, just kind of talked a little bit of that. Just some Gartner stats: 400 billion loss of cyber threat worldwide in fraud. And again, this is just reported. It definitely is. It's a big problem. It's only going to continue to get worse. Cloud systems are getting more complex. More and more companies are embracing more complexity in their environments, not simplifying it down. Even when you go all in the cloud, it still brings its own challenges. This whole infinite scalability. Again, it creates sprawl. It creates a lot of easy ways to launch code, a lot of easy ways to launch systems. This ease of use comes with a trade-off, and it's typically a security compliance that checks and balance. The companies, when they mature and they start to implement, or they're being forced on by their say their vendor to a PCI-focused company, a fintech company, they're also over time expected to fill the level of certification. So I'm going to go over a couple of just best business practices, and we can make these available to you as well. So if there's any questions on these, or you would like to get a drill down of this information, we can provide that. Understand that protecting the multi-cloud best practices. So first off, understand that this is a shared model in a lot of ways. There are definitely different ways to segment and to protect more data and to let's say you're in public cloud, you may have a noisy neighbor, but there are things you can do internally to protect your data. You may want to, obviously encryption. is in the very minimum that you do, right? You want to also evaluate your cloud provider. So, not all cloud providers are created equal. You really want to take it from a business perspective and define what are your goals, what are you trying to accomplish here. Is this something that's being mandated by your senior management? Is this something you're trying to do to basically extend your budget out? You do need to outline your goals so you can have a clear expectation of where you want to head with this. You want to evaluate different solutions as well. And then you want to look at the SLAs that the different vendors offer. So, and not just like network SLA, uptime SLA, but also look at what they offer you from a when the SLA does occur, when there is an outage. What does that mean from a compensation perspective? A lot of people think that just because I have 100% network uptime, that's cool. But what does that really mean when it comes to the credits I will receive for that network uptime? And then how does that balance out with my business goals, right? Is this SLA even clear, even close to where I can go? Is it just to provide a little bit of accountability to the vendor? But a lot of times you'll find that these SLAs are not going to cover your business loss. I mean, they're going to be nowhere near your business loss. Again, I go beating down into the SLA side of the house, but there has to be some internal introspection that happens. A lot of times it's setting expectations internally. You have to develop not just a good SLA with the vendor and negotiate that out, but also a good internal SLA. For example, if you're going to take a lot of your services to the cloud, what does that mean from an availability perspective when it does go down, and when you need to bring it back up? From a business perspective, do you have departments and do you have systems that are okay to be offline for a couple hours or an hour? Or do you need to have a true high availability and for more mission critical departments? Say you have a large call center. For most organizations, that's a mission critical department. Being able to service your customers at the end of the day, being able to give them, give them support, that can go down. So if that mission critical environment goes down, what is your plan B? How can you get it back up and running? You also want to get access to the workload management tools that are available. So many vendors offer a tool sets also to provide transparency, telemetry back to you. That's very important. Leverage those tools. Also make those tools part of your ecosystem. So just because you're outsourcing pieces and components to an outside party, make sure that you bring them back in-house to the support mechanisms that you do have. We find that most companies have their own IT departments, especially today. Even when we're talking about like outsourcing components from a capital perspective, right, infrastructure services, there's always a component piece of being able to bring that telemetry back in-house, being able to buddy check the vendor, getting reports in a timely manner, doing QBRs. That's very important too. Knowing the health of your environment. Is my environment in a healthy state today? Is my environment being patched? Hold your vendors accountable. Ask for transparency. Ask for telemetry. Ask for API ways of doing these things too. I mean, really push your vendors across the board. A lot of the public cloud providers are providing some pieces of this, but they provide the true telemetry. A lot of times you have to add your own systems in place. Hold them accountable. Start asking for these things. It doesn't matter if they're extremely big or they're extremely small. Start setting different expectations to your vendors. And then assure access to security experts. So, there's definitely a global security talent gap that's happening, especially in the U.S. market today. There's a lot of companies, and I see this in RFPs and just as we're having conversations. I need my data to be touched by only U.S. citizens, right? Because that's a compliance thing that I have going on in my company. I need the security experts to only be in the U.S. Because again they're seen as a protection mechanism. But the reality is that there is a major gap in jobs today for security personnel. One of the reasons why we didn't go the MSSP route and we decided to partner with MSSPs was for that reason. I mean, we saw staffing becoming a challenge more and not getting any easier. Even building a talent in-house, you build it and then you just basically set it up so that it can go somewhere else, which is not a bad thing, but it's something that it's never a winning battle. Today the market is not providing enough. Even students coming out of security departments and security schools, degrees wise and also certification wise, to meet all of this shortfall that we have in the workforce. What we do find is that MSSPs are typically more tiered. They typically have they've seen a lot more of these challenges and a lot more of these things. You do pay a premium for that expertise, but make sure it's available to you and your partners. Internally too, we do have a lot of expertise as Phoenix Snap on the security side. that is available. It is available from an advisory perspective, and it's not something we charge for. It's just, but we're also not going to do the work. We're going to recommend you to a partner that can do the work. But at least just being able to tap into a resource, being able to get some help, that's important, and make sure that's part of your vetting process. So one thing that is very important, especially on the network side, is that connectivity back to whether it be a public cloud, private cloud, whether you doing DR services back. There's always a connectivity piece that is very critical to this, and there's different ways to skin that cat. A lot of companies, they say, hey, I have some bandwidth, I have I have a firewall, so I need to VPN in over to somewhere else. Make sure that whatever you're doing and that's a good short-term gap solution. At least some layer of encryption, some layer of protection is better than nothing. But it does add some overhead, and also if you're doing, for example, backup and recovery services, it may actually not be enough bandwidth, or it might be too much overhead to be able to do encryption. Veeam does offer specifically some encryption, and some acceleration on its own on the software side, which is nice. So it does take care of some of those issues, but it doesn't resolve everything. And then you also have, from a multi-layer perspective, you can do a lot of different connectivity pieces. You can go, hey, I want to go direct connect back to AWS from my headquarters or from my data center. There are services that are offered, with your telecom providers. You pay a small premium for that, but you're getting a more dedicated link versus just going public cloud or over the internet. There are better ways to skin the cat. Same thing with Azure, same thing with Google Compute. In our data center, we have next generation vendors as well, that like Packet Fabric and Megaport, that offer these services. And to multi-cloud strategies, multi-cloud vendors, enough the people that do use it leverage it well, and it is always a security and compliance stance that they're taking with that. So that's something to be very cognizant of. And if you cannot protect your data from a physical perspective, meaning connectivity, direct connects, cross connects that you can do, you can also protect it from another perspective, which would be encryption side. So make sure that all the vendors that you're using in your ecosystem and all the data that you are moving around is encrypted. And then backing up your data. So this is your last line of defense. And back it up in everything. Don't back it up just in, I have my ERP system backed up, I have my VMs backed up. Really sit down and do the pecking order of what is mission critical from a backup perspective, and then from a DR perspective. Two different things. First, back up all your data. That should be a given. And then really tier your data and say, look, what is mission critical? What needs to be up and running? And look for solutions that are out there. Like, for example, our disaster recovery services are really geared around having your data not just backed up, but also having the available compute storage, memory resources that you need to get your production environments back up and running. And then we also do something a little different. We do a free run book. So we figure out, okay, what is it that your environment is really going to require to be up and running? And then we go and exercise that at no cost to you twice a year. We make that available to you, saying, hey, go vet it out, test it out, making sure that when you do need it, it's available to you and it's real, and it isn't just something that you have to go and now in last minute go try to get it back up and running. And that alleviates a lot of problems. And with all that, I'm going to pass it over to Rick.
Well, cheers, Ian and David. Thank you for everything so far today. And Veeam, if you're not familiar with us, we really want to go right at the edge of what Ian just ended with. And that's, take a backup and a DR strategy pretty seriously. Ransomware is probably one of the best examples of why you need to have it right today. But daily disasters, accidental deletions, all these other challenges are just part of the problem. And IT pros know that there are a lot of challenges around this multi-cloud world. And, I should highlight that cloud, as David was illustrating in the opening, means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I always like to say that cloud is a model of elasticity, consumption-based pricing, things like that, rather than just flat out assuming that it's, Amazon, Azure, or something else. And then the whole market of service providers, I think, are very important. But we see a real set of challenges around data criticality, and that really comes down to your business. The best example is just, what have you digitally transformed process-wise? You probably need it available. And the amount of growth and the amount of sprawl, new services, new apps, new amounts of data. All these challenges are real, and we have these other kind of pressures of being available. So we want to make it easy for you to keep everything available. And we actually are convinced that there is a very strong market opportunity for backup as a service and DR as a service. So I guess I should just define what those two mean. DR as a service is really a powerful technique for being able to get a DR target in place without having to build that second site. That's one way to look at DR as a service, leverage a service provider to do that. And the one secret weapon here about DR as a service is you don't have to refactor your applications. If you think about taking whatever you have and going to the hyperscale public clouds, it's going to change a few things, right? But DR as a service usually can go down the path of being the same platform. Backup as a service as well, and variants of that, right? Leveraging different services for your backups. There's a huge market for this. We actually feel that, just the top one there, store data remotely for DR, getting backups off-site, that's a fundamental challenge that a lot of organizations still struggle with. Additionally, more cost-effective than in-house. That's the best case for the notion of build a second site or leverage a service provider. Keep the staff available for more strategic initiatives. Heck yeah. You want to make sure that you're modernizing apps and transforming everything else, knowing that your DR and backup strategies are sound, right? So that's our view on the market. And hopefully you, as a practicing IT pro, kind of find that some of this makes sense to you. But as we look kind of further, there needs to be kind of a collection of services. The first I want to highlight is infrastructure protection, which universally infrastructure protection as well as off-site backup and disaster recovery and public cloud protection are a collection of what I would say critical capabilities that really build off of each other. So we'll start with infrastructure protection. So infrastructure protection really aligns to two different ways. You can go about it with managed service providers or service providers. And, in the Veeam world, we can do that through products that you might already know about. Veeam Backup and Replication, Veeam One, Veeam Agents. And this is very important because this is a broadening portfolio across different services. So the agents, if you're not familiar, those work for your physical servers, laptops, those Windows tablets if you want as well, Windows and Linux. So you can actually have this broad set of protection rather easily. And the other side of that is that managed service provider backup. And, when Ian was talking about how they view managed service providers as well, I think this is very important. And then same type of thing. The backup is done with Veeam technologies and the other values around offsite storage, or even just managing the fact that things are backed up. You can even go that full down approach if you would like as well. And this isn't just necessarily sending your backups to the cloud. You can actually fully commit to this offering as taking your data services, and I don't want to use the word outsourcing, but leveraging a service provider for the operational break fix, day-to-day stuff. If you don't want to spend your time doing that with backup and then know that you have great recovery with Veeam, there are technologies and service out there to do that today. And that's one of the versatile elements of Veeam software is that it can be used so many different ways. You might be using it on-prem already, but you can easily say yes to a service provider for other services just like that. And then the other third kind of guiding principle I wanted to share with you is around off-site data protection. And again, people still struggle with this. Everything from site failure to ransomware. And usually when you go off-site, it kind of implies you might have a different set of authentication. Ransomware is a great example. And the very first thing we list on the top site is Veeam Cloud Connect. If you're not familiar with that, that's basically backup storage in the sky, lack of a better word. And it's a completely different set of authentication, different storage, and especially if the insider protection element of it is used. There's even an out-of-band immutable copy of the backup data. So even if we had a malicious administrator, ransomware that was very Veeam aware, all of those different types of problems, that insider protection backup can be preserved. And we always have advocated this notion of the 3-2-1 rule, having 3 different copies of your data on 2 different media, one of which being off-site. That's a really strong technique that'll keep you resilient against a lot of different failure scenarios, and it doesn't require any specific technology. It paves the way for a great cloud story, a great service provider story, and then also the DRAS situation, that disaster recovery kind of business competency. Disaster recovery isn't a technical thing, by the way. I always kind of go into DRAS and disaster recovery in general. It's not moving data. That's easy. But knowing that your business can run very easily, that's the hard part. So that's why I say it's a business competency. But my earlier point about not having to refactor applications for DR, best way to verbalize that is if I have VMware on premises, I want to run VMware in DR. If I have VMware on premises, if I'm running Azure VMs, something's got to change in the middle. This is an element here where you can have a very transparent disaster recovery, paving the way for that business competency to be a little bit easier of a conversation. And when it comes to getting backup data off-site, I think it's also important to note that it's a broad set of your different sources of data, whether it's virtual machines, VMware and Hyper-V, workstations, physical servers, basically driving those backups to the cloud, or more specifically, a copy of those backups to the cloud. That's also an important way to look at this. I'm not necessarily saying get rid of all your on-premises backup storage, but maybe it makes more sense if we have a mechanism in place that will allow you to easily get backups off-site. And by the way, I think workstations is an emerging area for this. I've seen a lot of organizations that really worry about remote workers and the basic availability of what they have on their workstations. You can very easily, with technologies from Veeam and PhoenixNAP today, deploy workstation backup for your remote workers and have those backups go to the cloud, to a service provider resource. And the magic here is that no VPN is required, and then some really awesome Veeam stuff happens in the middle. For example, if the end user is on an airplane without Wi-Fi, when it's time to do a backup, Veeam will actually queue up the restore point, so you won't miss the backup even if they're offline. And once they get connected to the internet, then it'll sync it up. So little smarts like that can really take care of what I call the little pockets of important data. And then disaster recovery as a service. This is another one that I think when you look at, again, your virtual workloads, having a target to fail over to without refactoring the applications, I think is a really powerful competency. And the beautiful thing about the way Veeam and our partners have implemented DRAS is it has a relatively transparent failback. You don't want to be too sticky with failover, okay? And the failback, just to give you a little piece of advice, it's only the differencing block since failover, okay? So assuming that the production site is recoverable, best example is large-scale power outage or network outage. You decide to fail over, and when it comes time to fail back, you're only going to take the differencing blocks. The important thing here is you want to have the confidence that business competency of disaster recovery works, is easy, because sometimes if it's not very easy to do, if it is fiddlesome and error prone, organizations will actually not fail over. They will sit there and stay down and unavailable. It's not really the expectation of 2019. So when you look at this menu, lack of a better word, of having offsite backup, service provider backups and data protection driven through managed service providers, as well as opportunities around the cloud and software as a service, getting this done, there's a really big responsibility, and Veeam realizes that there's a lot that honestly it just makes more sense to leverage service providers to do, and that's the way we've structured our business and our partnerships. Kind of breaking it into these 3 services here, I like to say that you could look at this as to the cloud, going offsite backup in DR, that first column. Within the cloud, meaning protecting the data you have in the infrastructure, and then the public cloud protection. So from meaning if you needed to move your data out of the cloud, you can do that as well in the public cloud, Amazon, Azure, as well as our emerging Office 365 product, which is actually our fastest growing product right now. And if you're not backing up your Office 365 data, you should. Anyways, getting this done is arguably easier when you have a service provider because, again, IT organizations want their staff to focus on building a more robust production technology deployment for production apps. And by having a service provider in the mix, you can do that. So we have a lot of products to help you get there, but if you had to visualize it simply, Veeam is really focused on having simple, reliable, and flexible products to help you manage the challenges of your explosive data growth, the sprawl, the dawn of the cloud. And to get this done simply, reliably, and flexibly, the service provider aspect is one way to help you scale your ability as an IT group and really not miss out on the expectations of the business. So, Ian, thanks for that opportunity to share the Veeam side of it. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Rick. Rick touched upon all these things, so I'm not going to rehash them. But what we do offer, Veeam Cloud Solutions based on backup and replication, disaster recovery. We also do managed backup for O365, so we are embracing the multi-cloud ecosystem. O365 was really the easy one to go in and provide a good backup solution. That was not inside O365. It's a misnomer that O365 has built-in backup, especially when you need to go back several versions behind. And then we also are able to offer that into, say, an infrastructure environment, so that in licensing around that, so you can do your own exchange systems if you as a fallback. If you have to get up and running, you were having challenges just getting your 365 instance back up, we have mechanisms to also offer that. And then we have a system called Data Security Cloud that's really based on security compliance. Today it's PCI third-party audited and certified. And we're also listed as a PCI DSS vendor when you go to the Card Association website. We are also finalizing all the HIPAA controls in place right now, and that will also get third-party audited. We are internally also have gone through all of the training exercises around HIPAA and getting all of our staff up so that we can be HIPAA high trust as well. So it's for us, compliance is definitely a journey, and we'll continue to add more and more. And that's what Data Security Cloud is really about. It's really about an ecosystem that is virtualized. It's ready for you to go, but it has third-party auditing compliance based around your industry, and then also all the proper controls and monitoring that is needed by a third party. So real quick, I know we're wrapping up on time. So we've developed a couple things that are available to you on the especially on the Veeam related services. Free trials. So kick the tires, try it out. We have a pretty quick implementation. 2-day SLA. Typically, we do much better than that. 24/7, 365 support, available anytime. And what that means is live chats, phone call, ticket system. You want to do WhatsApp, you want to do some Slack. We have that available as well. So a lot of mechanisms, easy ways to get a hold of people, and there's always somebody at least available to you to do no more than 20-minute response time, but you can always pick up the phone and get a live person, always. And then we have also created a lot of automation and orchestration for a lot of our product lines, and we incorporate that all into what we call PNCP, which is really a control panel for automation orchestration. We're building more and more tool sets to allow more API-driven activities through that, so even bypassing our control panel. But all the back-end orchestration is the same for that system. We're just exposing most of it. And something interesting about this, we did win a Veeam Innovation Award for the integration work that we did, and it was really focused around the reseller market. But from an organizational perspective, so say that why would I care about reseller services? Well, there's another way to look at it. If you're in an organization in IT and you're supporting multiple lines of business, you're supporting multiple organizations in your IT company, you might be part of a holding company. This is a really easy way for you to segment and then also to do billable back-end services back to different departments. So we get that feedback like that as well. It's really good for environments that are complex and and your IT department supporting a lot of different pieces, and you want to have a good way to show your CFO or show your CIO, hey, this is how much we're spending to support these different systems. This is the back billing that we need to do. So it offers a lot of hooks and automation around that. So just a high level value prop of why Veeam and Phoenix Snap. A personalized approach. We're very competitive in the market. We do have a lot of building blocks, but within those building blocks, we do have a lot of flexibility as far as how we apply them. Or even if, say, you come to me today and you're like, I really don't, I'm going into a cloud journey. I need to use an organization like yourself to get to the stepping stones. We're okay with that, and we give you flexibility along the way to get there. So whether that be services flexibility, revenue flexibility, term flexibility, you get a lot of different component pieces with us that we're not so hard set as some of our competitors. And then again, this is more for the reseller market, right? But we are very a very channel centric and channel friendly company, just like Veeam. That's why we get along so well. We do have a very simplified deal registration and resource management system as well for channel. Just a quick use case that we had, with electric mirror. We've and this is again, any of this information can be made available to you at a later time. Don't want to overburden you with a marketing fluff, but just showing some we do get a lot of kudos, and we do have a good reputation for solid customer service and making ourselves available to clients. And with all that, I would like to thank everybody on the call. And I'll turn it over to Dave. Thank you.
Great presentation, Ian and Rick. We do have some questions for you from the audience before you go. And while I ask you those, I'm going to bring up this poll question for the audience. This is a multi-select question, and it says, what additional information would you like about the Phoenix Snap and Veeam solution? Just select one or multiple options there. We appreciate that. So let's see. First question here is for Ian. This person is asking if you have any experience or feedback about banking customers moving towards cloud solutions.
Oh yes, sir. Wow, fintech. So one of the reasons from a DNA perspective is we are very PCI DSS focused. That's the first thing we embrace as an organization. We do work a lot with credit unions and some smaller banks. I mean, we're not working with Bank of America. I'll lay that, but we are working with a lot of banking customers that are moving towards cloud. And it is definitely a stepping stone. I mean, we do see that a lot of co-location is the easy go-to. They're starting now to do more and more IaaS infrastructure services. Depending on the organization, we also see there is a lack of sometimes resources, especially if you're a smaller bank. So we do have a good partner ecosystem that we bring in place. Like I said, we're not an MSSP, managed service security service provider, but we do a lot of infrastructure services that lend themselves nicely to audit controls and also to show exposure around that. So that's what we find is really a lot of transparency and a lot of and also being from a DNA perspective, being able to have a conversation with an auditor, being comfortable with it. We ourselves get audited twice a year. We get third party audited all the time. We swap around our security vendors every 2 to 3 years to just keep it fresh, a fresh set of eyes, and we do that on purpose. So it's really what we see for the cloud journey is really more about the being able to provide controls, transparency, and being comfortable with the compliance side. The technology side kind of follows suit of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's good to hear that more and more banks are adopting and warming up to cloud solutions. Let's see here. Next question is for Rick. They're asking, if I use Veeam already on premises, how hard is it to start using a service provider for DRaaS?
Oh, actually, good question. It actually couldn't be easier. As long as you can handle a username and a password and next, go, it's that easy. So things like DRaaS are very easy to onboard. Couldn't be that much more difficult, actually.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yep.
Go ahead, Ian.
Oh no, I was going to add a little bit to that. So from a service provider perspective, we as Phoenix Snap are also in the drop-down venue. So if you go inside your Veeam console, you'll see Phoenix Snap listed. You literally type in the username and password that Rick is talking about. From a DR perspective, we also, if you have any kind of pipeline limitations, because that does happen, we also have seed servers that we ship out to you. That could be anywhere from 60 terabytes to a couple petabytes. So, one of the importance of DR and backup is to seed the information and then do the incrementals based on that. We do find that depending on where you're at from a corporate perspective or where your data centers are at, you might have some limitations in bandwidth, and so there is only Achilles heel to that whole equation, and that's why we have a sneaker net service that we do for free, as a matter of fact, to use so that you can get the data onboarded.
Excellent. Well, yeah, that sounds very easy. Well, it looks like that's all the time we have in our Q&A session, but a really great presentation, Rick and Ian both. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you.
Cheers.
For more information on Veeam and the Phoenix Snap solution, check out the handouts tab right there in your audience console. There's a handout. It's a joint solution brief on their cloud backup and replication services that you can download to get more information. And with that, it's time for our next presentation.
And now I'm excited to introduce our next presenter. That is Mr. Adam Margette, Technical Specialist at Unitrends. Adam, thanks for being on.
Hey, good afternoon, David. Thank you so much for the introduction, and good afternoon to everyone out there on the line. Thank you so much for being a part here. And Unitrends, certainly glad to participate. As David did mention, my name is Adam Margette, Technical Specialist here with Unitrends for about 3 years now, and I'll be taking folks through our portion of this afternoon's presentation as a part of the Cloud Solutions EcoCast. But before we get into and really talk about what Unitrends does and how we accomplish our solutions within the disaster recovery and business continuity space, did want to kind of reset the table here around a lot of the threats and ultimately the cost of data loss and downtime. And what the industry has really coalesced around is this figure that you're seeing here, about $9,000 per minute. And whether you feel that your organization transacts significantly higher or potentially even lower in terms of that number, we can all agree that data loss and downtime is something that IT has little tolerance of, And, some of the considerations here when we look at this figure is it's not just the organization's inability to transact or drive revenue while systems are unavailable, but we're also taking into account the impact or the loss of employee productivity, the potential cost of recovery depending on the outage or the disaster at hand, as well as the reputation's cost. If there's something significant like a data breach or a ransomware attack and our organization now is being dragged through headlines on the news, do we risk losing prospective customers or current customers to our competitors? Ultimately, again, downtime, something that we have very, very little tolerance of. And to kind of put this in perspective another way, when us as IT professionals are defining the service availability goals with with the business units that we serve, or with our customers, in the case of us as a manufacturer here, the margins within which we are operating are razor thin. If your organization has a goal, for example, of 4 nines of availability, we're looking at a threshold or a tolerance of 4 minutes of unplanned downtime per month, and that still comes with a fairly significant cost ultimately to the business. So ultimately what we see here at Unitrends is that we're really operating in somewhat of a less is more world. IT is facing more risks, more projects, and more work than ever before, all while being armed with less manpower, less budget, and less time with which to accomplish these things. So it's our goal here at Unitrends to give you some of that back. But what we've also observed was last year in 2018 was really the explosion of cloud computing. And in a study by IDG published through CIO magazine, that early in last year, the first half, 90% of organizations that they were looking at are using cloud in one way or another. And the vast majority, 4 out of 5 of those organizations, have a strategy around their multi-cloud environments in place. So when it comes to migrating potentially workloads or bursting to cloud to leverage resources, even SaaS applications, a lot of folks are planning for that move or have already started that transition. And in a study by Forbes looking at kind of the state of cloud computing, the majority of that use case was for those SaaS applications, followed shortly thereafter by infrastructure and also platform as a service, kind of the main ways in which we are consuming now those cloud resources. So consider what this means for your organization and where now are our users creating data or even intellectual property that we need to maintain or protect. When we take a look at the presentation later on, our cloud providers have this model of shared responsibility where they are guaranteeing some certain level of application availability or hardware redundancy, but they will tell you black and white that the data protection is still the responsibility of you and your organization. So when we think about our business continuity and disaster recovery strategies, are we equipped to protect all of the different ways in which our end users now are creating and storing that data? And that's, I think, a great segue. Let's take a look at, kind of protecting SaaS applications is kind of the first thing that we're going to look at here as a cloud-based solution with Unitrends. And right here from Microsoft, again, is that model of shared responsibility where, human and programmatic errors, malicious insiders, external hackers, virus and malware, anything that could affect data in that way is still the responsibility of the customer. And we've observed or have seen cases of ransomware variants even that are looking to encrypt and lock down Office 365 environments. Of course, Microsoft has you covered for things like hardware failure, software failure, power outages, again, with the redundancy of their data centers and of the platform here. So to help fill in some of these gaps, we have Spanning, a cloud-to-cloud backup service for Office 365, the G Suite, and Salesforce.com. With Microsoft on an E1 level agreement, your recycle bin has 30 days retention as far as deleted items. And for a lot of organizations, that's strictly not enough time. So we're able to fill in gaps around recoverability and retention with this Spanning product. It is a cloud-to-cloud backup service, so all of our data is still being maintained within the Azure environment. We're still under all of the Microsoft compliances that you are by using their O365 service, but we are able to augment some of the capabilities there by providing or enabling our customers with granular item level recovery, on-demand or automated backups of the entire O365 environment. You're getting infinite retention with this, unlimited storage, which I think is a great value add as part of the service, and the ability to, again, run that self-service recovery. Recover to the same mailbox, another mailbox on the tenant. That cross-user restore is a functionality that I think is great for folks that have turnover or churn within the organizations. We still don't want to lose that proprietary data. We can save it to another location or to the admin's mailbox. And auto-discovery of new accounts. As you're bringing more users on, we're going to discover and automatically start roping those into our backup schedule. And again, everything is allotted or provided on a simple per user per month subscription. So with the Spanning service, very, very straightforward interface. It demos clean in about 10 minutes or so. Definitely check that out if you're looking at protection for your Office 365 environment, that granular recovery, self-service recovery, cross-user restore, some great benefits. And again, a really straightforward per user per month subscription, no additional fees or add-ons. For storage consumption, we're handling all of that for our customers on the back end. And so just a couple of quotes, and again, I know that the SaaS providers themselves will tell you, your manufacturers will tell you, but don't just take it from us. Forrester and Gartner, those third-party really leaders in that industry research, they're calling for it as well. Forrester saying that you must plan data protection for every new SaaS service to which you're subscribing. Gartner as well recommends that third-party backup tool for OneDrive, for SharePoint, again, to help protect against some of those things that we don't necessarily always think about, those insider threats, and increasing for yourselves that consistency of experience and really making that ease of use and that operability something that you can have at your fingertips. So our Spanning service will help fill in gaps from those SaaS providers for O365, the G Suite, and Salesforce.com. We want to take a look as well at looking in the ways in which Unitrends is able to help or augment folks' strategies around protecting workloads or instances that are residing now in the public clouds. And we have four main use cases to pair with AWS and Azure. We can certainly help with cloud migration. We're going to take a look at that in a moment with our Boomerang product. Leveraging the clouds for disaster recovery, even disaster recovery of those cloud-based instances, again, to protect against cloud-level downtime. It was, I believe, a couple years ago at this point here, but it was within AWS, and an engineer was updating the billing tenant for part of their S3, I believe, in the Northeast region here. they entered in a typo as they were inputting their scripts, and they ended up crashing the region of S3 for multiple hours. And a number of organizations, Unitrends as well, was impacted by that outage. So while rare, and while in a lot of cases there are protection means in place, we still do want to be prepared to protect against those cloud level events. We can also leverage those clouds for offsite backup copies, retention of that data on premise, put those into another location, kind of following our age-old rule of 3-2-1 when it comes to data backup, as well as the ability to protect those cloud-based instances or those workloads. But when we look at kind of the first two, protecting those cloud-based instances and also leveraging the cloud as a backup target, that would start with our Unitrends backup software. It's a virtual appliance built on a hardened Linux kernel, a CentOS kernel, and it is deployable on top of any of your mainstream hypervisors, VMware, ESXi, Hyper-V, Citrix Zen, Nutanix, AHV. You can also deploy UV through the AWS or the Azure marketplaces, again, to protect those cloud-based instances. The cloud is, or the software, excuse me, is licensed on a per instance or on a per machine basis, well equipped with our enterprise deduplication, compression, the ability to run recovery assurance. Those are automated sandbox tests to benchmark recovery point, recovery time objective compliance, as well as running application-aware scripts to certify or benchmark the application, the underlying applications as a part of our backup strategy. But also complementing our software is a really neat little product, one of my favorites in the portfolio, Unitrends Boomerang. And when we talk about disaster recovery and cloud migration, that's where I think for me the Boomerang piece really comes in. So right now, today, it is available for protecting VMware, ESXi-based workloads. You install Boomerang as a local virtual appliance on top of your vCenter, and you're going to group VMs into protection groups. Those protection groups are paired with a cloud bucket, either S3 or the Azure Blob Storage, and then from there, you're able to replicate those blocks to the cloud storage location for that offsite repository. But once the blocks are in the cloud, there's a number of functions that you can perform from there. The Boomerang tool can deploy those blocks into running instances. And for Amazon, for example, if we're taking those S3 blocks and migrating them to EC2, all of that AMI formatting is handled natively by the Boomerang product. We will network map and reconfigure the virtual machines, stand them up as that EC2 instance, and you're simply doing so at the push of a button. Now, from there, we can leave those instances running if the goal ultimately was migration, but we can turn those instances back off, say when we've had an outage at our local site, a local host or guest has crashed. We can deploy those blocks into production, reroute our traffic to maintain productivity. If our goal, again, was that migration, we leave those instances running. When the local site is ready to be rebuilt, we can restore those blocks back to cold storage, kind of turn off the virtual machines and keep them updated with our backups, or even copy back those production instances to our local vCenter to replace or to take on the role or replace that of a failed virtual machine. And again, it's the Pilot Lite is what we call it, that functionality that helps convert natively to that cloud format. And by leveraging the EC2 or the cold storage buckets, we want to keep your costs low, leveraging that storage until that spin up is required. So again, you can deploy those at any time, and Boomerang can be purchased as an annual subscription if you're going to be kind of moving workloads and be working into and out of the cloud, let's say, or if the goal again was migration, we can license that Boomerang on a 30-day migration license to get all of those VMware VMs into the cloud and then deployed into production. And we had one customer of ours, actually based in Australia, migrate over 700 virtual machines over a weekend into AWS and deploy them into EC2. So some really cool technology, again, for the migration and then deployment of ESXi workloads. So just again, kind of a graphical representation for those folks that are a little bit more visual here. We've installed the Boomerang and are taking those VMDK snapshots locally. We pair those with that cloud bucket path into, say, S3. And when needed, to assume the role of failed VMs or to bring into production, can deploy those into EC2. And again, that AMI formatting or that cloud native formatting is all handled natively by the Boomerang product. I think a really neat piece of technology, and again, one of my favorites in our portfolio. But lastly, when it comes to the cloud, while we do have solutions to help protect SaaS applications, assist with cloud migration, protect cloud-based instances, Unitrends also has our own proprietary manufacturer's cloud with a couple of related services. So for Unitrends, data protection is going to start at your data center. There are two ways in which we offer our customers the flexibility to deploy and protect their local environment. Our capacity-based hardware, which you're looking at the top there, is our Recovery Series appliances. These are an all-in-one purpose-built backup appliance with backup software already preloaded and pre-configured, as well as the compute, storage, and memory resources to house local backup copies for fast recovery right on the appliance, as well as the compute and the memory resources to conduct all of those local backup and recovery processes. So you're not adding in an additional server for reporting. We don't need a back-end database. We don't need secondary storage for deduplication. It is all built into that purpose-built backup appliance, a true all-in-one that you see there. They scale from 2 to 120 terabytes of usable capacity and have 15 flavors of which. Now, if your environment has adequate server and storage resources, you can deploy our backup software. We took a look at that, which you can deploy through the public cloud. But you can also spin that up as a virtual appliance on top of ESXi, Hyper-V, Citrix Zen, Nutanix AHV. And locally, with either our hardware or software, we are backing up physical servers, virtual machines, your NAS-based storage, as well as specific applications or application aware with our agent. There are over 250 operating systems, hypervisors, and applications that Unitrends can protect. And again, kind of augmenting that core on-premise solution are those O365 and the Boomerang pieces. But the Unitrends Cloud, again, when we look at our environment, a sample deployment here, and all of which you can manage from a single user interface, all backed by that single vendor support call, is our full solution. So our goal here in a lot of cases is to reduce that finger pointing, potential risks of multi-vendor complexity, running into issues of interoperability. It's all under Unitrends. So you have one vendor, a single provider, as well as a single support call when anything should go wrong. So again, here we have our appliances or our software that are backing up locally, that storage, our hyper-converged infrastructure, our virtual environment, our physical environment, and then from there, options in terms of how we get that data off-site. We're compatible with a number of hot and cold copy targets for long-term retention, certainly a hot target being the Unitrends Cloud, another appliance, or our Unitrends software. But we're compatible with disk, tape, NAS or SAN storage, as well as public clouds, AWS, Google, and Rackspace for that long-term retention or that archival of our data. But again, for us, what really enables recovery is replication to the hot target. And we see this there, leveraging our offsite recovery with our appliances. Again, that hot target, a one-step restore process where our backups are being held in a proprietary format that they're immediately available for restore. One of the benefits, and when we see kind of our WAN optimization here, is that when replicating to our hot target, the data has already been deduced, compressed, and oftentimes we're only sending incremental changes. So our replication windows are very, very small. We aim to meet very aggressive RTO and RPOs by doing such. We also have a white glove full service offering, our Unitrends Disaster Recovery as a Service, which is the full spin up and hosting of your applications or instances in the Unitrends Cloud, again, to guard against that site-wide failure. So if there is a significant local outage, something like a ransomware attack, hurricane, fire, flood, again, that local failure, bring the environment or those mission-critical applications online in the Unitrends Cloud, reroute that user traffic via the SSL VPN, and maintain the productivity of your employees. We just brought on a customer recently, about 3 months ago. They run an audio-visual rental service, camera equipment, production enterprise-grade camera equipment for filmmaking. They're based here in the Northeast, and when they came on board to Unitrends, deployed locally as well as in the Unitrends Cloud, and they had designated their point of sale and their accounting software for spin up with our DRAS service. So again, if anything happens locally to their site, they're still able to maintain those front of store operations by bringing those instances live within the Unitrends Cloud so that they can again continue to transact, keep the business up and running when they come over, or again to protect against those outages. But the Unitrends Cloud is what is enabling that DRaaS, and we also saw that it can be available for long-term retention. For our customers, what's really driven them to the Unitrends Cloud is a predictable upfront pricing model, and no hidden fees or gotchas, and the ability to really forecast that TCO year over year. We want to make things very straightforward and predictable. So there are no things like egress fees. You don't need to know the amount of or the percentage of storage that you're going to access in a certain period. We want to make it very, very straightforward. So it starts with how much data are you looking to replicate to us for that retention. We license in 500 gigabyte increments. And what I think is important to note is that it's all a la carte here. So you can start and replicate as little or as much as you need. When you're getting started. There are some vendors that will require you to license out the amount of cloud capacity that mirrors that local appliance. If you have a 10 terabyte appliance locally and you only need to protect 2 terabytes of that data for that long term or that archive, then only license out 2 terabytes with us. There are no kind of gotchas here with the cloud service. And then you're selecting your retention period on top of that. We offer 90 days, years 1 through 7, and even infinite retention or forever retention beyond that, and all of the backup copies will be housed for you on a grandfather, father, son, or a GFS rotation. What I love about the Unitrends Cloud is that even once you have the backups replicated into our cloud and you can add that white glove disaster recovery as a service, you have full access to your backup catalog, all of the backups that you have residing on this particular hot target, right through that same local interface. So if you need to import a backup for recovery, even perform granular recovery just by mounting that virtual disk or the Samba share to the cloud-based appliance and downloading those files back, you can all do so through the local UI. And again, there are no fees for egress or data retrieval, fees or charges. The backups are yours. The cloud capacity is yours, and you can view all of those backups that you have available, import, download as frequently as you like. And again, that's through that same user interface that you have locally. On top of the cloud retention and the ability to recall those backup copies for recovery, you can elect to add that white glove disaster recovery as a service, where again, for you, the end user, your onus or your responsibility here is on placing that phone call, and we're handling the spin up from there. We do offer different levels of that disaster recovery as a service based on your recovery time objective SLA. But before we look at the levels, did want to share a little bit about what goes into that service when we call it white glove. You've got access to our expert consulting group. We're going to work through, and when we're building out the prep kit with you, identifying all of those protected systems, the networking configurations, boot order dependencies. Again, we want this to mirror your local environment, so when you call and fail over, your end users have that same experience, that same look and feel, and we're able to maintain that productivity. There's ongoing testing as far as monitoring replications, as well as testing and certifying the backups and the applications themselves, and the criteria or the acceptance tests are all defined by you, the user. There's ongoing continuous monitoring and automatic compliance reports that you will get from Unitrends, again, both certifying recovery point and recovery time objectives, as well as indicating that application level performance. So we see here the 3 levels of DRaaS that Unitrends offers. Our premium DRaaS is a 1-hour recovery time objective SLA, elite 24 hours and standard, a best effort SLA, led by our award-winning white glove services team, and it's going to be a queue-based system there. So I would say that if you're the only customer calling in, that best effort is probably going to have you up and running in a matter of hours. If there's a larger scale event, say a hurricane has knocked out the sites of a number of our customers along the eastern seaboard here, we would have our premium customers prioritize first, followed by elite, followed by standard. You can also see that we're running weekly recovery assurance testing, monthly testing with that premium and that elite service. And again, really designed for critical virtual machines, those business important or those mission important VMs, and that standard kind of designed for a larger set of VMs or the customer's full data center. Any 3 of these levels can be offered or licensed on a per instance or on a per machine basis. You can also license standard, the same as our cloud capacity is licensed in that 500 gigabyte increment, in which any device or any machine being replicated within that volume is eligible for spin up with us. And so again, just looking at what that DRaaS looks like, again, We're deployed locally, either hardware or software, at your location, replicating to a target in the Unitrends cloud stack. And when we kind of break that out, we see that we've got different hosts available: Windows Physical, Hyper-V, VMware, as well as the storage that's been allocated for your environment. When that local site goes down and is no longer unavailable, you've made that call. We initiate what we call instant recovery. So we're going to leverage storage, vMotion, or live migration to bring our virtual guests online quickly. We use the appliance, the Unitrends appliance, as a temporary data store, mount and expose that share, and then we'll leverage that vMotion or live migration to migrate the location of the VMDK or the VHD in the background, but it allows us to bring our guests online within minutes. So we initiate that instant recovery, and we again provide that secure SSL VPN for you to reroute customer and your end user employee traffic to the environment that we now have live in our cloud. We're still continuing to back up so that there's not going to be data loss, kind of this dead air time when you are running in the cloud. We're continuing to take those backup jobs to that cloud target. So we host your environment for up to 30 days is the benchmark standard with any level of our service, 30 days of runtime, additional days as needed. But we're performing those backup jobs the entire time, and when you're ready to fail back, we're going to seed a full copy onto a brand new appliance or a NAS device and ship that back to your location so that replication over the WAN is only those small deltas or those incremental changes. We ship that appliance for fail back. We're going to help the customer reroute that traffic. Eventually, once the environment has been restored from our backups, we reroute that user traffic and we ship a new device to you and start prepping for future failover events. We're going to walk through that prep kit and that run book with you again to prepare again for future spin up or future disasters. The last piece here that we wanted to kind of look at is really exciting, and it's not traditionally what we were used to here at Unitrends, kind of our appliances, our cloud. And the last piece that we wanted to touch on here is how we're making some enhancements to our portfolio and really providing protection for some new use cases that we didn't necessarily do as well with in the past. And this is a brand new product here. And what we're looking at is that a lot of industry studies today are indicating that we're very close to the tipping point where more data and IP is being created on the edge than in our traditional data centers. Certainly with the evolution and kind of mass adoption of SaaS applications, that is true. But our mobile or our workforce now is newer than ever before. The critical data and the applications are now on laptops and PCs that are increasingly geographically dispersed, increasingly mobile, and certainly vulnerable to loss, theft, and user error. So we want to enable folks with a protection piece that they can feel confident in when it comes to backing up those user workstations. It was fascinating that we see an increase in these mobile devices, and the cost as well is significant, that a stolen or a lost laptop costs an organization on average $47,000. And you might be thinking to yourself, that seems absurd. You know, our workstations, that we buy for our employees run anywhere from, $800 to $2,500. The majority of that cost, over 80% of that cost, is ultimately the impact of the lost data and the lost intellectual property that was residing on those machines. So again, really significant can be these incidents. So we're introducing to you, we've been in our preview program here since the beginning of June, since early June, our Unitrends Cloud Backup, a simple protection for your mobile workforce. It's everything that you need for that workstation backup for one straightforward monthly subscription price. Today, with the ability to protect and secure those roaming Windows endpoints. Our goal here is to reduce the loss of productivity, potentially waste time on recovering those laptops, and it's a product that folks can use standalone or to complement an existing Unitrends backup appliance. In this case, it is starting with that Unitrends technology, but been enhanced for those roaming laptops. We know that increasingly these machines are geographically dispersed. They are going to vary in their ability to have connection to the internet. So what we've done here is developed a hardened version of our file level agent. Again, suitable or hardened to not hang backup jobs as end users are wandering in and out of places with internet connection. Again, provide that backup agent locally for those workstations or those PCs, and pair that with a Unitrends Cloud target. The agent covers a terabyte of protected capacity on the laptop, and it's replicated to the Unitrends cloud, where you have unlimited of that cloud provision storage, cloud storage for up to a terabyte of that protected capacity. It's about what you'll need for about 30 days of retention, so forth. Very straightforward user interface, the ability to perform that individual or that granular item level recovery, cross-user restore, put it back to the same or a different workstation that has the Unitrends agent installed. And again, very, very straightforward. We've identified the backups we want to restore, the destination assets here. But again, we want to make it very straightforward to protect these workstations. What's really unique right now about the Unitrends Cloud Backup is that we are in our preview program, and as a potential new user, you have the ability to influence that product directly. We are still having folks that are signing up and getting that new code every 7 to 10 days or so, coming out with new updates, and they're really driving ultimately the end look and feel of the product. So I think that it's a really cool opportunity to participate in kind of the development of a manufacturer's product and kind of guide it to the use cases or the functionality that you as the users need and really want to see out of it. So that agent is collecting data, sending it to the Unitrends cloud. You've got that self-service file level recovery. But again, we want to kind of learn from our customers what you want to see, what different retention offerings we're looking for here. And so did provide the link here for folks if they want to get started with that preview program. You have the ability to come in, get the product in your hands, start to use it, and kind of guide us along our journey. During the preview program as well, any orders that are placed, we are offering 50% off. So our toll-free chat line there, if you'd like to hear a little bit more about this particular product, grab a screenshot of the link or the phone number, and certainly can get in touch with us in that way. And so that was the bulk of what I had for folks today. David, I will turn it back over to you to see if there were any questions on the line here. Really thank everyone, and especially David and the folks here for letting us be a part of today's EcoCast.
Absolutely. Yeah, great presentation, Adam. Let's see, first question that came in here, is there a data encryption provided with Unitrends Cloud?
That's a great question, and should have mentioned that. Yes, with the Unitrends Cloud, as paired with a physical or virtual appliance, as well as with Unitrends Cloud Backup, there is the ability to enable encryption. Our data centers are SSAE 16 certified, and all of the encryption that we are using is AES 256-bit. So we have the ability to encrypt backup copies both in flight and at rest. Additional certifications or compliance mandates that are met, folks can find in our Unitrends Cloud FAQ available on the unitrends.com website. But yes, encryption is available to 56-bit.
Excellent, excellent, nice. Another question here, can we protect Windows servers with your direct-to-cloud product as well?
So that's a great question, and the answer is it is coming. Mac workstations is something that we have planned for later this year, Windows servers as well. But again, it's a great opportunity to join the preview program and really influence what you would like to see. I think that we will be having a per server agent as well as the ability to protect Macs will be functionality to keep an eye out for later in the year, but certainly something that if enough folks are really driving that, we want to make sure, again, that we're building out this product and what the future of the product looks like in accordance with the use cases that we're hearing and that we're seeing. So that's great feedback. I'll relay that to my team, make sure that it's something that they're hearing as well, but certainly something to keep an eye out for in the coming months.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I look forward to that addition to the product. Sounds like a really awesome new product that I'll have to check out for myself. Adam, thank you so much for being on the event today.
Absolutely, David. Thank you so much, and we really appreciate being here. It was our pleasure.
For more information on Unitrends, of course, visit unitrends.com and check out the new trial offering from Unitrends with the new cloud backup product.
All right, I just popped up a poll question on the screen, and that is, what additional information would you like about the Unitrends solution? I'll just leave that up while I announce our first of 4 Amazon $500 gift card winners. The first winner on today's event is Mr. Jimmy Arcade from California. Congratulations, Jimmy from California. If you are not Jimmy from California, no worries. We've got 3 more gift cards to announce still on today's Cloud EcoCast event. So make sure you stay tuned for those. We'll be announcing those one after each of the upcoming presentations. So we still are going to hear from Nutanix, TierPoint with Zerto, and Pure Storage with Cisco. So make sure you stay tuned for those. And before I introduce our next presenter, I just want to make sure everyone has answered the poll question on the screen. Again, what additional information would you like about the Unitrend solution? I see some congratulations to Jimmy coming in. Thank you very much, everyone. All right, looks like most everyone has answered that poll. Thank you for doing that. And now I'm excited to introduce our next presenter on today's event. That is Mr. John Eugenio, Principal Solutions Architect at Nutanix. John, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for being on. Take it away.
So, good morning. I'm John Eugenio. I'm a Principal Solutions Architect over here at Nutanix Frame. Most of you have probably heard of Nutanix, but the other word you probably haven't. Frame is a company that was acquired by Nutanix last August, and I am part of that team. Like I said, Principal Solutions Architect here over at Nutanix Frame. I was 12 years over at Citrix, and I was a customer as well, so I've been doing end-user computing for a good amount of my career. What Frame is the idea that people have been taking a look at, or rather my customers as well as my prospects have been looking at alternatives to other virtualization technologies. The premise for Frame is that in 2012-2013, our founders were working primarily in the video encoding space, as well as creating different codecs for streaming video. So just like you would go to Amazon Prime or Hulu or YouTube to be able to watch your favorite video off hours, they were doing technology, they were creating technology around H.264. And what ended up happening was they needed something that would be able to provide Windows applications that would allow for video editing as well as animation. And I took a look at that time at all the technology that was sitting out there, and they didn't like the refresh rate. They didn't like how the audio was being handled. So they were already doing video. They woke up one day and they said, well, why don't we try and create something ourselves? And so Frame was born. So Frame was born with the idea that even with or without a GPU, I could provide applications that were never, ever meant for the cloud, put them in the cloud, and we decided to challenge ourselves. Not only did we want to do something that was graphics-based, but we also wanted to be able to have the protocol, the display protocol, actually go at great distances over high levels of latency. That was always the promise and the premise of when I began my career years ago, but everybody always kind of got close to it. So we created something called the Frame Remoting Protocol. A little more about Frame. So we were working with Amazon Web Services on, at that time, a new instance type in their cloud called the G22X Large. It was a GPU machine. And one of our first charters and one of our first customers was to go ahead and work on behalf of a mutual customer with Adobe to provide Photoshop inside an HTML5-based window. So what we ended up doing was we had a lot, after we were successful with that, we had a lot of folks like Autodesk, like the folks that make SolidWorks. They came to us and they said, hey, you know, this Frame thing's actually kind of cool. I could embed it in a browser. I can go ahead and put it in my own portal. I can also have my customers authenticate with their own authentication, whether it be Okta or Azure Active Directory or anything like that. And people started to get noticed. So in March 2015, we rebranded. We were formerly called Mainframe Team when we rebranded as Frame, and we were acquired last August, and I was part of that original team. So the premise is that I can take Windows applications and desktops, and marketing wrote this, so I'll go ahead and take the engineering side of me. It's not just Windows applications and desktops, it's Linux as well. So if you have a application as well as a set of users that are either remote or on-premise, and you want to be able to create a delivery model for applications and desktops inside of the cloud or on-premise, Nutanix Frame brings you the ability to do that. There is no client to install. There is no infrastructure to install. All of that is handled inside of our control plane. And so you're probably wondering, how would I access these resources? Well, I access them in an HTML5 compliant browser, whether it be Chrome or Internet Explorer or Firefox or Chrome. And so what we did was, and I wanted to make sure that I put this inside of the deck. You'll have this as a takeaway, but from a 10,000-foot view, there's no agent required on a Windows workload. Okay, you are able to deploy it in hours rather than days or months or years. Our protocol is our own. We created it. It's called the Frame Remoting Protocol. It's based upon H.264. We have customers as well as software vendors out there that are providing their technology, so Autodesk Revit, AutoCAD. Every year for the last 5 years, we've done all the training over at Autodesk University for all of their products. Customers use us for ArcGIS. They use us for Photoshop. But I don't want you to walk away with the idea that it's only graphics applications. So if you had a homegrown application, something that runs the business, you have a web application, but it has a whole bunch of plugins, you can actually deliver that via Frame into a browser, even though the application was never necessarily meant for that. Now, the marketing folks like to say cloud agnostic. What the heck does that mean? Well, that means that you choose what infrastructure provider you want to use. If you want to say I want to use Amazon Web Services for some of my desktop workloads, I want to use Microsoft Azure, I want to use Google Cloud Platform, or I want to do something on-premise with Nutanix hardware on top of our hypervisor, Acropolis or AHV, you can do that. So if you say, John, I have some applications that absolutely must run on-premise, I'll say, that's fine. We can deliver it via Frame. Your users will access it via a browser. And not only that, well, guess what? It's on-prem because the workloads can run on AHV. If you come to me somewhere down the line and say, hey, by the way, we have contractors. Let's go ahead and go over a use case. I have a contractor that will not necessarily need to be able to access my network, but I need to be able to give them the resources that they need to do their job. I need to have this in AWS. It needs to be there for 6 months. I need it to also expire as well as delete itself after I'm done. So you can do full-time, you can do part-time, you can do spot use cases. And for many, many years, people have been saying, well, single pane of glass. Well, we actually did it. We figured if people were going to be getting into desktop and application workloads, and they were going to be getting into it via browser, why couldn't they be able to administer it that way too? So at the heart of our, and this is not refreshing properly. Well, I'll just go ahead and talk through it. At the heart of our technology, a user logs in. There it goes. A user logs in with whatever authentication you want them to have. So if they're using Azure Active Directory, they're using Okta, Duo, Ping, anything like that, you can actually integrate those types of authentication. But if you say to me, John, I have people that have different data needs. They're using Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, or Box, or they're using an old SharePoint, or they're using Windows file shares that I've had for 22 years. Can I go ahead and do that? Yeah, you can integrate that into Frame. So at a 10,000-foot view, how this actually works, okay, is when you want to actually provide those desktops or applications, you pick an infrastructure. So, for instance, I had a customer last year. They came to me and they said, we're an AWS house. We want to run our workloads on AWS. I said, groovy, we can do that. What applications are you going to do? All the way at the top, number 2. They said, well, that's great, John. We want to do Microsoft Word. We want to do Google Earth and ArcGIS, and maybe occasionally we'll have some of the Marcom, the marketing communications people use Photoshop. I said, okay, they said, well, right now we're running Google authentication. Can you support that? We said yes, users can log into Google, but they said we also have a corner use case where somebody's actually logging in via Okta as well. Can you support both of those at the same time? I said, absolutely, we can do that. And then the next thing was, where is the user data? Is it on-prem? Is it in the cloud? We wanted to be able to integrate that in. And then they said, well, John, we want to also deliver it to users in an email and have it be a invitation type scenario. Well, that invitation type scenario is either A, you invite them into your identity provider. So I can go to nutanix.okta.com and I could log in and be presented with a set of buttons that will get me into Frame, or I can just have somebody go to frame.nutanix.com, which, might I add, at the end of my presentation, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that you can go to nutanix.com/frame and actually try a test drive for yourself, whether it be 2 hours, a day, a week, or a month. Okay? So that same customer last year, they came to me and they said, okay, we did things in New Jersey, but we also want to do the same exact thing in Ireland, and we want to do the same exact thing in Singapore, and we want to do it in India as well. How long would it take? And I said, have you got an hour? We can build that all in an hour because you already started doing that in AWS. They said, John, well, there's a catch. We're doing AWS in New Jersey. However, in all the rest of the areas, we want to do Azure in Asia, and we want to in Ireland. We want to go ahead and do Google Cloud Platform. Can we do that? And my answer was yes. Then they had the question, all right, will there be more than one URL that people are going to have to log in? I said, that would be ludicrous. Why would we do that? They log into the same URL that they would, and they authenticate how you want them to. So what I want you folks to walk away, as you're going through this EcoCast, I want you to get a good idea that and think about your use cases within your IT organization. If you have an application, whether it be fussy, whether it be that application that needs to roll out, or even that application that's been around for 20 years and you need to find some way to deliver it, but you couldn't figure out how you were going to do it, Frame is one of those options. So the folks at Nutanix Frame would love to hear from you. If you open up your browser and you go to www.nutanix.com/frame, just like it sounds, like a picture frame, you'll actually see that there's a test drive button that you can actually click, and it will take you through the process of choosing in a wizard, where do you want it? Do you want it in Ireland? Do you want it in New Jersey? Do you want it in California? So we built it like this. We decided that delivery of your enterprise applications or desktops shouldn't take a year. It shouldn't take a month. It should be as easy as possible, as if it were the end of the year and everybody's scrambling to go buy something on Amazon for their loved ones for holiday. So that's Nutanix Frame. There was a question that was in there in terms of Frame security. How is user login safe and non-hackable? This is exactly why we go ahead and make sure that you use your own identity provider. So the identity provider is handled by usually the customer. From an encryption standpoint and authentication, let's go over to the authentication side first. We never suggest that you do just a single authentication method. It's better if you do primary and secondary. Again, the identity provider does the challenge, and then we wait for a SAML assertion. That SAML assertion then sends over what group, what user needs to be going to which Frame account, as well as their launchpad. From a protocol standpoint, we are all 443. I get this question all the time, hey, how many different ports do you have for Frame? And I said, it's like Lord of the Rings. It's like one ring to roll them all. So it's 443 for everything. There's another question inside of the chat window, and it says, how does Frame work on-prem? Well, good question. Our control plane, the Frame platform, is actually sitting in AWS. when somebody's actually using Frame workloads, so let's say Windows 10 workloads that are sitting on top of the Acropolis hypervisor on top of a Nutanix NX cluster. What we have are two pieces, and I'm sorry I don't have a whiteboard or a Visio diagram to show you, but what we have is three pieces, excuse me. Number one, we have the Acropolis hypervisor, and we have Prism Central. How we communicate back from the on-premise is we have something we like to call a Cloud Connector appliance. It's a CentOS VM that is encrypted and communicates via WebSockets and a 443 payload into the Frame platform. Okay. Then the last thing is people connect in via the Frame remote and protocol via 443. The next question on the screen, actually, it's gone. David, there was another question. I'm a little bit confused, and they're gone.
Yeah, no problem. So we answered the question, how does Frame work on-prem, right?
Yep. Yes, indeed.
And then in terms of Frame security, you talked about that. There's another question here about which clouds do you support, and can you use multiple clouds?
Yes, indeed. So that same use case example, so we support AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, as well as Nutanix AHV. Frame was built and it was cloud first, so we have the framework, pardon the pun, to be able to add other clouds in the future. We just have to work with folks on that. Is there any discounted pricing for K-12 education? You know, you're going to have to email frame-sales@nutanix.com. That's frame-sales@nutanix.com. I am just a simple engineer and do not know the pricing. So I'll go ahead and make sure. David, can you type that email address to Hank? That would be awesome. And then
frame-sales.
It's frame FRAME-sales@nutanix.com.
Okay.
And there was one other question, and it just totally deleted on my screen. So you probably see the other question. What is the other question?
The other question here, they're asking, let's see, do you have any timelines for Oracle Cloud and IBM in the future?
That is not currently on the roadmap. If a customer requests that of us, and Oracle and IBM are willing to go ahead and talk to us just like Google was, I don't see any reason why we couldn't discuss it. But there are currently that's not currently on the roadmap today.
Okay. And so for companies who are interested in using VDI on premises, is this a good alternative for them?
Yes, indeed. So on-premise, on top of AHV, that's what Frame is on AHV. And you can provide a Windows 10 desktop. You can provide, I know this is going to sound a little bit strange, but you can do Windows 10, Windows 2016, 2012, and in the next couple of weeks, Windows Server 2019. Sometimes we have folks that have applications that weren't built for a desktop operating system. So yes, we can indeed do that, and you can indeed use this as a VDI alternative.
Very nice, very nice. And how hard is it to get your own applications into the desktop that's in the cloud?
If I could do a demonstration for you, I would show you that it's actually really, really quick, but I'll describe it. So inside of the Frame dashboard is the ability to go into something we like to call the sandbox. The sandbox, in Citrix or VMware parlance, that would be a master image. You connect in via HTML5. It's, again, like watching a video on YouTube. And you drag and drop the installer onto the browser. It copies it up to the virtual machine. You run the installer. And Frame has a little utility called the shell helper. And that is watching if any changes are being made to the virtual machine or if any applications were being installed. It asks you, would you like to make this available to end users? You click on yes, and it actually onboards it and allows you to publish it inside of the platform. So we wanted to make sure that everything was automated at every single step. Were there any other questions?
No, I think you've covered everything. A really great presentation, John. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Have a good day. Take care. Thanks so much.
You too. For more information, of course, visit that URL that I posted there in the chat, Nutanix.com/product/frame. You can sign up for the free frame trial there and try it out for yourself. It's like John said, it's super easy to get started. Don't need any hardware or anything like that. Just give it a try. And now it's time to answer, or if you haven't answered the poll question on the screen, please go ahead and do that, and I'll just leave it up while I announce our next prize winner. We have another $500 Amazon gift card going to Richard Romero from Texas. Congratulations, Richard Romero from Texas. We have 2 more gift cards to give away still on today's event. And now I'm excited to introduce Mr. Steve Blow, Technology Evangelist at Zerto, and Matt Brickey, Vice President of Professional Services at TierPoint. Steve and Matt, are you there?
We are. How are you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. Thanks for being on. Take it away.
Thank you very much, David. So my name's Steve Blow. I'm Tech Evangelist at Zerto. Really, this session's to go over, I guess, the capabilities that Zerto has from a mobility standpoint and where they can help you. And then I'm going to lead that into Matt, who is from TierPoint, one of our key partners. And he's going to really talk around our partnership and what they can offer from a solution perspective as well. So if we start with Zerto's capabilities, really, Zerto is a single platform. That's the key thing to note here. We have many use cases. Mobility is one of them. The key thing is that everything that we do is based around our continuous data protection. This is really the enabler for all of our capabilities, our application consistency groupings, which I'll talk about, our journaling capabilities and our replication capabilities, which all ultimately tie into the use cases that we have off the back of that. We then wrap orchestration and automation around that. So what you often find and traditionally have found is actually you need 2 separate products to deliver, the replication, the continuous data protection, and then you need something else to deliver the orchestration and automation. It can become very complex because you end up with a multi-point solution. With Zerto, it's a single platform that has all of this encompassed and built within, which makes it a lot simpler. And lastly, we wrap around that our own analytics platform, which gives you complete visibility and control across your environment. So you're going to be seeing things like IOPS on your production environment, and therefore what your bandwidth requirements are and bandwidth utilization for replication and things like that as well. So you get a lot of visibility there, and because we're operating in near real time, typically just 5 seconds behind production, you're going to pick up on any issues that your environments have pretty quickly. And actually a lot of our customers say that Zerto is often the first thing to alert them to an issue because we're operating in that near real time space. So from an architecture perspective, Zerto supports many platforms, obviously VMware and Hyper-V from an on-premises environment. We support Microsoft Azure, IBM Cloud, and AWS from a public cloud standpoint, as well as many cloud service providers such as TierPoint. The key thing with Zerto is the simplicity of our architecture. Typically, there's only 2 components in a VMware or Hyper-V deployment, which is a management server and then a virtual replication appliance per hypervisor host. And that means that we can scale with your workloads. In public cloud environments, we operate a Zerto Cloud appliance, a ZCA as we call it. And in a deployment where our partners are utilizing Zerto, so the likes of TierPoint, quite often that architecture is actually managed by them, so it's not even something that needs to be concerned. So again, really simple. Zerto can be installed, as I said, within 2 hours, and you can be up and protecting your workloads, ready to move them for a mobility use case. Now, if we look at how traditionally workloads have been protected, typically you're protecting each individual VM individually, and then ultimately moving those VMs on a per VM basis. But if we look at your applications, they're going to be made up of more than just a single VM. They're going to be made up of multiple VMs, and they're all dependent on each other. And what that means is if you're moving each VMs individually or protecting each VM individually, you're all protecting them to different points in time. And that means that when you recover on the other side, you're recovering them all to different points in time. which ultimately means that you're then going to have to fight to get consistency across them again. That process in itself can take longer than the actual move that you perform, and actually can extend your downtime window or your migration window that you need. Now, the way you usually get around that with single VM protection methodologies is actually by shutting all of the VMs down on the production side way before you do the move. And again, that's going to extend your migration window that you're looking to operate with. So the way Zerto operates is different. We utilize what we call virtual protection groups. And these virtual protection groups allow you to group multiple VMs into a single grouping. So you choose which VMs you want in each virtual protection group. But what Zerto then ensures is for every one of these virtual protection groups, or every one of the VMs within those virtual protection groups, we actually ensure that every point in time that we're storing on the target side, so they're recovery points that we store in our journal, which I'll talk about on the next slide, but each one of those is at the exact same point in time. So when you perform a move or you perform a recovery with Zerto, you're actually making sure that that move or recovery is of all VMs at the exact same point in time. So typically we would say you would protect an application per virtual protection group, so that you're protecting all of the dependencies of that application in one single component, and it makes it nice and easy to move it. And obviously, what we find customers utilize these for as well in a migration scenario is actually the ability to do that staged migration. And you create a virtual protection group per stage, essentially, with all of the VMs in each stage in the relevant virtual protection group. So as I said, what we're doing is we're performing continuous data protection, and I'll talk about the actual migration process in a minute. But what we're then doing is storing all of these changes in a journal on the target side. That journal can be up to 30 days or down to 1 hour. Obviously, in a migration scenario, you're probably only going to want 1 hour in there. But what we're doing within here is inserting checkpoints every 5 seconds. So these are Zerto proprietary. They're not snapshots or anything like that. And it's all done on the target side. And we're inserting these points in time every 5 seconds. And they are essentially points in time that you can recover to. So it means that you can recover to an issue in a disaster recovery scenario or a backup scenario. You can recover to just a few seconds before the issue occurred. But actually, in a migration scenario, what this gives you the ability to do is actually perform the move itself way before you actually are going to do it live. And you can actually test your processes, validate, have I thought of everything? Have I understood all of my dependencies? Did the re-IP process work with all of my applications and things like that? You can test and validate all of those, and at the end you can actually generate a report. So you can present this to whoever you need to present it to internally to demonstrate actually the failover or the move has taken place. This is how long it took, and this is how long it will take. Obviously, therefore, in a live move scenario, so and you're prepared for when that happens. That A, it's going to work. B, you know exactly how long it's going to take. That could be massively advantageous. Now, obviously, the key thing is how do we perform that migration process? So when you set up your virtual protection groups, we perform an initial sync where we replicate the entire VMs over to the target side. We can actually precede this as well if you want. If the VMs are very large, you can precede that replication with a copy of the VMDKs on the target side. Once that initial sync is completed, we, as Zerto, we are performing continuous data protection. So we're then replicating everything in near real time. As I said, typically 5 seconds RPO, so 5 seconds behind production, over to the target side. What this means is that your data is always being updated. So one of the big challenges with a migration is always moving the data. What happens with Zerto is actually that data move happens long before you're going to perform any migration. And then we're just performing continuous data protection on top of that, ensuring that actually that data is always only 5 seconds behind production, so that when you're ready to move, you can obviously move forward to that process with a lot more control in your hands, essentially. You don't have to shut down VMs, shut down your applications, wait for all of the data to copy. That extends your migration window extensively. With Zerto, that data is already there, so we're not actually moving any data in the migration period. So what we do is when you initiate a move, at that point we shut down the source VMs. We then insert a checkpoint in the journal on the target side post-shutdown. Obviously, it's seconds worth of data, so it only takes seconds to insert that checkpoint. We then recover to that checkpoint on the target side, bringing the VMs up. So the VMs don't exist on the target side until you perform a move. Zerto creates the VMs as part of our orchestration process. We can re-IP, we can attach it to the relevant networks, we can recover to whichever storage devices you want. But we'll bring up that VM, and that's all we're doing there because the data already exists there. We're just creating that VM. So that whole process takes just a few minutes to recover your VM onto the target side. And as I said, that this is the key aspect here, that we're not moving a large amount of data during any migration window. You've got complete control over that migration because we're doing it continuously in the background with zero impact on your production environment. Now, as I said, we're hardware agnostic. We can run on your existing hardware. We're multi-hypervisor and have multi-cloud support. I talked about the platforms that we support today. And the test migration capability, which essentially performs the same process as this without the shutdown on the production environment. There's no impact on production when you're performing a test migration. It gives you that complete validation way before you're actually doing the live migration. So one of the things that obviously, we're seeing a lot of uptake is around, cloud strategies. So I've got some statistics here from Gartner. So they say by 2021, over 75% of mid-sized and large organizations will have adopted a multi-cloud and or hybrid IT strategy. And that by 2022, public cloud services will be essential for 90% of business innovation. So really the key thing here and what we're trying to deliver here is actually a single platform for continuous availability, data protection, and workload mobility to, from, and between multiple clouds. A lot of people have these strategies, but actually what they're doing is they're placing their workloads based on day one requirements. But actually those requirements are likely to change, and having the capability to move those workloads around according to where they fit best is really essential to getting the best out of those cloud strategies and gaining the efficiencies that really those strategies are there to deliver. So the key thing is with Zerto, it doesn't matter where you deploy it. It looks exactly the same. So it has the same look and feel, same configuration options. Everything is exactly the same. And when we tie that all together, it means that you can have, your VMs running in TierPoint's data centers. You can have them running on premises. You can have them running in AWS, IBM Cloud, Azure, any of our other cloud service providers, and have that complete flexibility to move those workloads around or protect those workloads between different environments where you deem fit, essentially, or is where it's most efficient or where you can gain the most efficiencies. And really, that's what Zerto is about, providing that converged IT resilience platform where we're bringing all of these use cases. Obviously, we focused on migration in this webinar, but actually, disaster recovery, backup, that multi-cloud, hybrid cloud strategies, that mobility piece in there is key as well. With the orchestration and analytics piece wrapped on top, this really is a single solution to provide you complete IT resilience over, traditional multi-point solutions that are very complex, can take masses of professional services to actually get them installed. With Zerto, you can be up and running with all of these capabilities in just a few minutes, in just a few hours, sorry. And the key thing is with that, as I said, it's a single platform. There's no modular installs or anything to deliver any of the other capabilities. When you buy Zerto, you get all of the capabilities. So I just really wanted to focus on our DRaaS capabilities and where we work well with, obviously, our partners before I introduce you with TierPoint. So just to highlight that, I wanted to show you the Gartner Magic Quadrant for DR as a service from 2018. So this is current latest one. And you can see here that there are 10 providers on here. Of these 10 providers, 9 of them are utilizing Zerto to deliver some of these capabilities. And you actually can see here TierPoint being one of them. If we look at the Forrester Wave, again, there's 10 providers on here. Of these 10 providers, actually all 10 are utilizing Zerto in some form to deliver these DR as a service capabilities. And again, you can see TierPoint clearly marked in there. So on that note, it's probably makes sense now for me to hand over to Matt and let him talk you through the solution offerings that TierPoint can deliver.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, thanks for the time today. I'll spend a little bit of time on TierPoint and the Zerto partnership, and then I want to get into our methodology on how we utilize Zerto for migrations and how they support us with our larger customer moves, and wrap up with a couple of use cases that I think will be relevant to the audience. So TierPoint, if you don't know, is a national provider of cloud and managed services that goes across VMware clouds, Azure, AWS, DRaaS, all the typical hosting and managed services platforms. We operate at about 45 data centers all across the country. And as you can see on the content here, that we've been a partner with Zerto for quite a few years, right? We're one of the top partners with them worldwide. There's a lot of statistics on this slide with regards to how many customers we have and workloads. But as far as protecting workloads, we've got more than 12,000. We've moved with Zerto more than 25,000 workloads. We have a team of about 850 that are on the technical side, technical and non-technical side, who protect our DRaaS business and our migration business. And where this originated from is that where TierPoint and Zerto's relationship began, it began years ago with Zerto being a partner with us for our DR as a service platform. And as we grew that out, right, and we started to form our consulting organization, we realized that there was a lot of similarities between the use cases in a DR failover and a migration, right? So we took advantage of the know-how inside of our organization when we built out our migration practice. And actually, if you look at the engineering makeup of our DR and migration team, they're very similar. They're not on the exact same team. We rotate them a little so they can have a different experience and different knowledge base, but we're able to use Zerto's platform for a number of different use cases, and it makes us more efficient and I think more effective in how we do our business. So if you look at a customer profile for TierPoint, there's really three, and I'll build these slides as I go. As a customer migrates into the cloud, right, my team's responsibility is to build that path for them. And the first type of customer that we see is we tend to label them as more conservative, because they don't really want to implement any risk. They're not looking for a lot of transformation in their organization, and they really are relatively new to outsourcing, at least their IT operations. They may have some SaaS platforms that they've outsourced and things of that sort, but for the most part, they're used to running their own data centers and potentially all their own equipment as well. So how we see them move typically on their path to the cloud is, they're moving from on-premises, and many of them move in the co-location, right? And that's really just your equipment in someone else's data center, in most cases ours, right, when we're talking to these customers. And they may put on some managed infrastructure as a service. And what that means is that we will own the hardware, we will operate the hardware, and we will sell it back to them more or less on a lease. That's kind of the first step that we see as our customers. The most common one that we see is the hybrid cloud one. Most of these organizations have already been virtualized. They're already on Hyper-V or VMware. They may be in a private or multi-tenant cloud today on their own premises or in another hosting provider. But their next couple steps are a little bit more transformational in nature, meaning that they're wanting to take advantage of either newer technology, faster technology, become more efficient and use platform as a service, instead of just, kind of running things as they have been for the last 8 to 10 years. So what we see them do often is do some sort of hybrid cloud, meaning that either I'm going to use, VMware's latest and greatest, or some Nutanix, or maybe I'm going to use both of those and also use some Azure and AWS for my test dev or archival things. Things of that nature is where they're looking to kind of change the way that they're doing business or the way that they support their business and taking advantage of those technologies. And then last, the one we see is typically the more born in the cloud type organizations, or those organizations that want to become known as a born in the cloud organization. They're already in some sort of hybrid cloud, or they build themselves brand new in some sort of hybrid cloud. They look to basically have everything possible running on a software as a service platform where it makes sense. And they're in deep, usually in a hyperscale cloud with either a test dev, I said archival, they're running production in there. They're considered more aggressive just because the move to go from basically a hybrid cloud or an on-premise cloud requires more planning and more, I think, measuring twice and cutting once to transform this aggressively into one of these types of situations. So the methodology that we use to get our customers here is this is, not rocket science. It wasn't invented by us. It's kind of the 4 phases of any sort of large project. But the way that we see it is that if we're going to move a customer into an environment, we have to know where they are at step 1, right? Where are you in a point of time with regards to not only, what kind of inventory that you have with regards to servers and storage and network and all of that, but what does the business want to do? Right, so 5-10 years down the line, where do you want to be with your organization? Or is it pretty much going to maintain the same, and you just want to, use newer technology, or are you looking to a brand new business model to where you're going to be looking to offer things more as a service or charge back model or things of that sort? So we do spend a significant amount of time in the first 2 phases here with the assessment and the design. And the assessment drives out how are you going to move and in what order are you going to move. It's very important to understand that a big bang move is very risky if you're moving everything at once. So most of our customers break those into move groups, and those are kind of application families, if you will, where they're moving in stages, and that way they can measure it and test it a little bit easier, and it's not quite as a dramatic event. So moving out of the assessment phase, this is where our solutions engineering team really shines, the design of how to use technology to accomplish your goals. This is where we build out a roadmap of technology. So if you want to go into a private cloud with some Azure backend, or if you want to go full on into Azure or full on in AWS, these are the steps that you're going to take to be able to do it, and the migration plan that you're going to be able to execute and over a course of time. And the way that we build these projects is that we build it as either we'll completely do it for you, or we'll give you the steps to where a customer could do a DIY move if they want. Most of them are some sort of blend of that, where we're responsible for a significant amount of it, but the customer's always bought in with regards to some engineering or some project management of that sort. So the build and migration phases are really where we move into our service delivery and implementation phases, and that's where we're building out your new environment, right? We're building it out as basically in a test bubble for you to be able to use it and be able to try it out and make sure that it's meeting all the needs and requirements that the business has. And then finally, the same kind of processes that we use to set up a DR event, we use that to migrate. So like I said, the same engineering team, the same methodologies are used in DR. If you think of it, that's just a DR test that we just leave at the target, right? Instead of failing it back over to the source once we find out that it works. So we're able to be very efficient with this and able to discuss it with a customer how it's going to work, able to, basically do a migration and the DR setup at the same time, and other use cases like that. So that is a good segue, actually, into my first use case. And it's covering a medical supply manufacturer that is basically 24/7 and has to place orders into hospitals and other medical facilities. So they're kind of like an Amazon of medical supply, and they cannot be down for even a minute, right, without it impacting their business in a significant way, millions of dollars. So as we were planning out the migration into a tier point data center, it became clear very quickly that there is no ability to move into a data center and then, wait a few days or a few weeks for the DR facility to be up. It had to be up at the same time, right? It didn't all have to be up at the same time, and I'll explain that in a minute because we moved them in phases. But when production was up, it had to have its DR sibling available at the same time. So what we were able to use was Zerto's one-to-many capability to basically seed both environments at the same time. So we were able to point it at the production data center and the DR data center and replicate that data at the same time. And as Steve mentioned, it gave us a lot of opportunity to burn it in, if you will, and that's to test it, make sure that everything worked, fail it over into production, and also fail it over into DR, and then fail it all the way back, right? So it gave us a lot of flexibility and the ability to just make sure that this was all going to work because we were moving thousands of workloads at a time, And that really, that's a pretty heavy lift, and it took a lot of planning and it took a lot of coordination and orchestration. But Zerto made it a lot easier to do that because we were able to, like I said, seed both environments at the same time and test. And the final slide in my final use case is a very common one that we see a lot, is that a customer wanted to evacuate their Hyper-V environment and move over to VMware. That also happens with evacuate VMware and move into Azure or any other platform. They're wanting to get to a different hypervisor or move into a hypervisor for the first time. And what happens with that, of course, there's compatibility issues, there's drivers issues, there's hardware issues that an application ran perfectly fine in one platform, and then you move it over to a different platform, and all kinds of new things pop up that you were not aware of. So again, by using that methodology of setting up the organization in more or less that synchronous copy, we took a lot of the issues of how to figure out a cutover away by allowing this to, again, have a staged-in migration to where we were able to, pre-install tools, load drivers, and then allow to test all the applications. And, frankly, not all of them worked, right? So when we were in this environment and there were failures, we were able to, repeat that a number of times to see where the failure was really originating and then come up with a solution. And that's very difficult to do in your common cutover window of, a weekend evening where you're supposed to cut over and test and validate and all of that. We were able to do this over a couple of weeks. And it really took a lot of pressure off the customer. It took a lot of pressure off of us to be able to, deliver a high-quality product and service. So that's the end of my slides. Again, thank you for the time, and I think we're going to open up the Q&A.
Absolutely, yeah, great presentation. Thank you very much, Matt and Steve. So let's see, first question we had, and maybe Steve, I don't know if you saw this in the Q&A box there, but they're asking, Are there any plans to support GCP? And also, what about backing up Kubernetes and containers?
Yeah, so if obviously, Zerto supports VMware Hyper-V, as I said, AWS and Azure, and then obviously we've got over 350 cloud service providers globally, such as TierPoint. GCP is an interesting one. I guess we're still watching the market from that perspective. It's absolutely on our roadmap. It has got to the point where we have had conversations with Google about this. But right now I don't have a definitive date as to when that would arrive, but it is definitely something that we are considering. If we then look at the container side of things, so Kubernetes, etc., right now we can protect containers in obviously depending on how they're deployed, where we're protecting the virtual machines the containers are running on. But the key thing with that, I guess, is we're still trying to see, again, how the market's really going to start adopting containers. We've obviously seen a lot of adoption around the DevOps use case. We're really looking to see if there's going to be more uptake on the production side of things. But again, on our roadmap, there's conversations going on with various different container platforms. But again, I don't have any hard dates yet. I would have thought that if we're going to deliver something new, it's probably going to be next year at the earliest at this point.
Okay, excellent. Very nice. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see, next question here is for Matt. And actually, before I ask it, I want to call the audience's attention to the poll question on the screen there that I brought up. What additional information would you like about the Zerto and TierPoint solution that you just learned about? I'll just leave that up while we do some Q&A. So, Matt, I'm curious, when a customer approaches you with, wanting to protect their on-premises infrastructure using DR in the cloud, can you kind of walk us through the process? I'm sure it varies a lot from, customer to customer, but in general, what would that look like?
Yeah, it does. It varies, of course, depending, again, on how much transformation they want to take. But the typical journey is something along the lines of, a 4 to 8 week assessment, and it all depends on size and complexity and, looking at where you are with regards to, your journey to the cloud or your journey to transformation, however you want to phrase that. And out of that, basically at the end of that particular phase, we have a migration plan and a migration methodology built out. From there, it depends on a customer's risk profile and urgency to frankly get to the end state. So what you'll see is a customer typically breaks servers up into 50 to 100 application or server groups in a move. That seems to be the most palatable size for a customer to be able to test it, cut it over, and to kind of logically think about, this is my ERP system, this is my CRM system, this is billing or finance or whatever, right? However they categorize their application stacks and servers. And from that point, it's really a matter of just sequencing out those phases. Customers typically take 2 weeks in between a phase. They'll cut over, and then they'll take 2 weeks to just go ahead and validate and test and get ready for the next cut over, and then they'll go through that. So, a 1,000 server environment, yeah, that'll take 6 months, to get in. Again, totally variable on how much change is going on in that movement.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then once they're protected, and say they do have a disaster, can they kind of tier their different applications? Like, well, these are the most critical applications.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to fail those over first, and then hopefully we can recover, on premises, and we don't have to fail everything over. Is it possible to do that?
Yeah, and a matter of fact, that comes out a lot of the times from the same type of grouping that I was talking about, and when you're talking about moving something. Typically, customers do that in reverse order. So a move group that is very important tends to move towards the last of the migration phases. But in a DR situation, those are the ones that are the most highly protected with the lowest RTO and lowest RPOs.
Okay. And I bet Zerto really helps with that, is it virtual protection groups? Is that what they're called, Steve?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Steve. Go ahead. You're the expert.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We love an acronym at Zerto. So yeah, virtual protection groups is our consistency grouping that obviously enables us to protect multiple workloads as a single unit, so you can protect your entire application in a consistent fashion.
Okay, very nice. And then, so I guess last question for you, Matt. If somebody wanted to get started, with TierPoint and Zerto, what do you recommend? What's the process? Do they contact Zerto? Do they contact TierPoint? How do people do that?
Either. There's a number of different routes, right? You can contact Zerto, and they can route, to their account team, and then, we're of course more or less joined at the hip, so we share, leads and opportunities all the time. If you have a channel partner that you go through, right, they can lead you into TierPoint or lead you into Zerto as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks very much, Steve, and thanks, Matt. Great presentation. Thanks for being on today.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us, Dave.
For more information on the Zerto and TierPoint solution, check out the handout that's available for download there in your audience console on the Handouts tab. It talks about Zerto's IT resilience solution and how it can help you. And, of course, visit the TierPoint website and Zerto.com for more information. And now it's time to announce our next Amazon $500 gift card winner on today's event. That is Stephen Krull from Wisconsin. Congratulations, Stephen Krull from Wisconsin. We've got one more gift card to give away after the next presentation. So here we go.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce Vish Jaka, Product Manager at Cisco, and Ramnath Sagar, Senior Manager at Pure Storage. Vish and Ramnath, take it away.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Really excited to be here. But first, I am Ramnath Sagar, and I lead the AI product marketing at Pure Storage. And I'm joined by Vish Jaka from Cisco. Vish, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks, Ramnath. Thanks, David. Hey, folks. Vishwanath Jaka, product manager, focusing on converged infrastructure and emerging solutions in the data center group at Cisco. Glad to be here today.
Fantastic. Now, if you look at some of the things that's being talked about in today's world, it's all centered around data and AI. Yet many enterprises are still struggling to move their AI initiative from pilot to production phase. So Cisco and Pure Storage now, with our successful partnership of FlashStack, are addressing these challenges with a new solution called FlashStack for AI. FlashStack for AI empowers the IT teams to transform their infrastructure to support modern AI-powered businesses. Today, we are going to talk just about that. But first, a little bit of introduction. FlashStack is a flexible all-flash converged infrastructure solution that brings the flash revolution to your data center faster. It's architected by Cisco and Pure Storage jointly and combines the best of the breed components of compute, storage, and networking, ready for your choice of management or automation. Now, there are a broad set of tailored turnkey solution and covers key data center workloads all the way from VDI to SAP HANA. And finally, it's backed by Cisco and Pure Storage, which means that you get a streamlined support, including a single number option. There are many ways to talk about AI, but here is an interesting perspective on why AI is so intriguing. If you look at all the innovation that has happened in the past 50 years, the world going from mechanical to digital was actually driven by a single innovation, a single approach in technology that's called Software 1.0. In 1954 came the world's first mass-produced computer. Of course, that needs programming using punch cards, but even to this modern-day application, that underlying approach has not changed. It's based on human expert, domain expert in certain field, translating their expertise and knowledge into some piece of code, whether it's a punch card or a Python code. This one approach transformed many industries from healthcare to financial and semiconductors. It also birthed new big industries like social media and cloud computing. But that changes now because AI represents a fundamental shift in this singular approach. Early last year, Andres Karpathy, one of the well-known figures in AI, he authored a manifesto calling the era of Software 2.0. Andrej makes a pretty simple point. Software 2.0 represents a fundamental shift in how we write software. In 1.0, developer picks a specific point in the program space, explicitly writes the software targeting that point. Software 2.0 is all about leveraging all the data that you have, powering that with the neural networks, and let your program explore the solutions and find the optimal one. Essentially, it's the idea that software writes software by looking at a lot of data and running on a massively parallel compute infrastructure. It's not limited by human knowledge or by our inability to explicitly write to cover all the corner cases in the world. And the funny part is that if you look at the image that's on the right side, it talks about one of the most popular competition ImageNet benchmark. The blue dot represents the Software 1.0 approach, and it shows the limits of how human experts can write. The green dots represents the power of AI, and it can shows finally how AI-powered system can have a higher accuracy rate than human prediction. While AI presents a tremendous opportunities to enterprises, enterprise IT face huge dilemma in lean learning everything, and that's due to three key challenges. First, the traditional data center does not follow data. Unstructured data means unpredictable data, and data comes in all forms and size and can be accessed in unpredictable ways. Traditional infrastructure are just not cut for that. IT teams are struggling to keep the data teams productive, and data teams are struggling to operationalize AI. The second challenge is many IT departments regard data science software as unsupported and undebuggable. And they are not wrong. The AI ecosystem is still in the early stages, resulting in fragmented, unfamiliar, and rapidly evolving software stack, which brings in complexity and risk. And finally, AI is not a single workload. It involves multiple stages that are collectively called AI pipeline. Each of these stages have their own software and infrastructure need, and there is no single solution that exists today that addresses the entire AI pipeline. So how does this AI pipeline look like? Well, there are 4 stages: ingestion, cleaning, transformation, explore, and finally training. And then I'm not talking about deployment, where you actually deploy the trained model into production application. Now, if you break the infrastructure down in the production environment, it's as complex as this. In fact, the design is true for every customer that Pure and Cisco have talked in the industry across the use cases. The ingestion phase is when you actually read the data set, let's say from your sensors. You store them in the raw format, and then you need to do an ETL or transformation or anonymize any sensitive data, typically done on a CPU server. Once you've transformed that, you store this data back on a silo. Then your data scientist picks up a subset of this transformed data, exploring the models. And finally, when they feel that they have the right model, they train this on all the data sets that they have, new and the old ones. Exploration happens on a small scale GPU cluster, whereas training happens on a really massive scale GPU cluster. The other challenge is there are key gaps across the key stakeholders: business leaders, data scientists, and IT teams. Business leaders have AI as their top agenda and are looking to strategically bring in AI practices so that they can transform their business to be AI first. Data science team are executing that strategy, building the advanced AI model, leveraging the data that they have. And now each of the IT team actually are the one who are enabling them. They are enabling the business leaders to be successful in the strategy and enabling the data scientists to execute that vision. The challenge is that IT lacks the expertise in delivering this AI and ML infrastructure, the ability to managing the data across silos, and also dealing with the open source software that the data scientists need. So to address all these major gaps, Cisco and Pure Storage are bringing in a new solution called FlashStack for AI. Now let's look what the FlashStack for AI looks like.
As Ramnath mentioned, as he detailed out earlier, there are some gaps between the various stakeholders within an organization looking at adopting and getting the edge in terms of competition by leveraging AI, ML, and deep learning capabilities. Traditionally, with our partnership so far, our customers have been successful with the traditional workloads, enterprise applications, and the infrastructure. Now we are extending the same capability, same kind of management, flexibility, and programmability, extending the same thing for AI and ML workloads with FlashStack for AI offering that we are bringing to bear now. So it's built on the new technologies and products that both Cisco and Pure Storage has developed over a period of time and released recently. So the key components that make up FlashStack for AI from an infrastructure point of view are three things. One is Cisco's latest addition to the compute portfolio, Cisco UCS C480 M5 ML. It's the next generation server for artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning capabilities. It's a purpose-built server that has 8 NVIDIA Tesla V100s that are connected through NVIDIA's NVLink interconnect, and it provides a scalable technology to go from 8 and beyond, 8 GPUs and up to hundreds of GPUs by connecting multiple of these things together. And the second key component within this is the Cisco Fabric capabilities to provide massive network connectivity bandwidth for fast data ingestion, ingress, and egress between various components, various servers, as well as storage devices as part of this infrastructure. And it supports multiple protocols for storage interconnect. So we provide options for customers to utilize any protocol, any form factor, or any scale across these pieces. And then it is backed by pure FlashBlade storage, where all the data is stored, copied across, shared across seamlessly with low latency and high bandwidth. It's a all-flash storage architected for modern analytics, AI, ML workloads, and it does seamless sharing of data across the various stages that Ramnath talked about, across clean, transform, train, and deployment in production. So combining these three, you get a immensely scalable system that's very flexible and that can fit neatly into your existing processes, existing management practices, irrespective of the kind of workload, be it traditional enterprise applications or emerging technologies like AI, ML, and deep learning. So with this, let's look at how this, works. How does it look in terms of actual operations and capabilities? So here are a couple of data points to look at. So what you are seeing on the there are two sets of graphs as you see here. The leftmost bar in both of these graphs, the white one, is showing what would be theoretical maximum for performance if it was done using synthetic data. So as you can see here for ResNet, you are roughly seeing 6,600 images per second. So now look at that number in a FlashStack for AI context. As you see here, with one C480 M5ML node connected to FlashBlade, you are getting almost the same kind of performance, 6,500, close to 6,500 images per second with one C480 ML node. If you were to scale up, you'll see with 2 and 4, as you can see there, the scaling is pretty linear as you add more and more server GPUs into the mix and all served by FlashBlade in the backend. Similar scenario with VGG workload as well. Similar benchmarking here, performance here. The actual workload with FlashStack for AI is growing pretty linearly. So with this, we have demonstrated that customers can use this architecture for starting small and growing as their application workload data set grows over a period of time, all within the same framework, same management plane, same structure. The other thing that we made sure as part of this architecture is to provide enough resources, enough flexibility in terms of GPU capabilities, compute GPU capabilities, as well as memory capabilities to cater to the various workloads and benchmarks that typically that represent the typical workloads used by end customers. So as you see here, we ran 6 different benchmarks, and in each of these cases, the utilization of GPU in mind, our C480 M5ML server also supports multiple form factors, multiple models of CPUs and memory to make sure that your actual workload for AI, ML, and DL, they're not limited by these resources. So in a GPU intensive workload, even having the CPU requirements in mind goes a long way in making sure that your deployment and your investment gets the best value out of the system.
So the other interesting thing about this solution is how we have, also supercharged the exploration standpoint. So that's done, and this solution over here is showing with a tool called PureTools, something that we have developed as a part and available as a part of the FlashStack software stack. So about 51% of time, data scientists are just spending on cleaning, loading, and wrangling rather than building their models and deploying them in production. And this is exactly where PureTools comes in, an exciting software capability. So data teams can finally do faster data science by reading metadata faster without adding any complexity in the data engineering task. We have seen customers who are able to speed up the metadata reading by 200 times. So for example, the graph on the left, it shows the standard Unix command, the time that it would take for standard Unix command to read 3.2 million metadata files. And that's about 20 minutes and 15 seconds. With PureTools, we cut that down to 10 seconds, meaning we give the entire 20 minutes back to the data scientist to build a model, validate the hypothesis quicker, and deploy the model into production. The other aspect to this is that this is all done natively from a software that they're using. This is due to the notebook. So we have a Python integration that makes it really easy for them to do data exploration from the toolkits and the frameworks that they are comfortable with. So when AI teams really want to share storage system that delivers the performance that they need with a cloud-like agility, what they want is a scale-out data platform that is tuned for the entire pipeline, not just for the single stage. And this is really where FlashStack for AI simplifies this, because now you have from Cisco a broad fleet of UCS servers purpose-built for each of these phases of pipeline. So for example, C220 for data ingestion, 240 for cleaning and transformation. And the same server with GPUs could be used for correlation as well as for deploying the model and inference. And for large-scale training, you can leverage the C480ML, the latest and the greatest UCS server that they announced late last year. So the fact that you can actually do this together with the simple management that FlashStack delivers and the ability for you to not move the data across different silos and share the data makes it super easy, but also easily enables the IT teams to extend from a traditional SQL-based application to modern AI pipeline.
So, I mean, so far we talked about how does it all, the infrastructure work, the various components work. So, but when it comes to actual workloads, when it comes to actual applications that customers use, we have a big ecosystem in play around FlashStack for AI, working with various technology vendors and application providers to make sure that customers are able to leverage their big data, the data lake that they have built over a period of time by collecting information from their applications, from their business transactions, and so on and so forth. So many of our customers have built a large data set. Now they're all looking at how to leverage the data and find out actionable insights looking at data. So FlashStack for AI with the broad ecosystem and application stack, be it TensorFlow or Kubeflow with Kubernetes, or on the big data side, you have TensorFlow in MXNet, Spark, and so on and so forth. So there are multiple reference architectures that could be used to run various workloads, run applications, containers, leverage NVIDIA's NGC cloud GPU container platform. There's a broad ecosystem that's fast evolving, and Cisco will provide, working with Pure Storage, a single point of support for all our customers' initiatives leveraging AI, ML, and DL. So the other thing that comes into play, the common questions that come to us is the varied use cases in which customers are using AI, ML, DL. So as you see here, there are multiple verticals, multiple stacks, multiple industries that are benefited by this technology. We only see 6 here, but this is just a representation, not an exhaustive list. So we have multiple customers, joint customers, who are leveraging FlashStack for AI for their business. For example, in the security and defense space, we have some large customers using our stack architecture, extensible architecture, to run proprietary applications, workloads to get insights. Similarly, on the finance and healthcare space, we have a number of customers who are leveraging our architecture to prevent fraud, to identify any data leaks or mishaps happening within the space. And on the healthcare side, running various diagnostic applications to detect various diseases earlier in the stage, so that patients get care sooner rather than later. So there are multiple customers leveraging our architecture for various of these use cases, and they have been successful, and we continue to see interest in this space more and more. So to summarize, so the takeaway for you all is that FlashStack for AI delivers an integrated solution that enables traditional IT teams to cater to their enterprise end customers as well as new age requirements for AI ML DL using the same state-of-the-art AI infrastructure that fits in nicely within the broader IT infrastructure on the management and the control side. So this kind of frees up time for the data scientists to focus their energy and time on running business applications and working on new algorithms rather than managing a shadow IT platform. On the other side, business owners, they can roll out new initiatives leveraging FlashStack, leveraging AI and ML using FlashStack for AI architecture as they go along. So it's built on a successful partnership over a period of time. You can find out more about the FlashStack, about C480, ML, FlashBlade, all of that together at these various sites here. And one of the collateral that we recently released is a Cisco validated design for AI ML DL workloads. You can get see the link here for a detailed design document as well as deployment guide on how to deploy the infrastructure as well as run the various application containers for AI ML DL. So with that, thank you all for joining. If there are any questions, happy to take it up, happy to provide some additional details.
Yes, Vish, excellent presentation. Ramnath, excellent presentation as well. We do have some questions here for you from the audience. Let's see, the first one that came in here, they're asking, can you tell us about the partnership? How long has this been going on between Pure Storage and Cisco? And what kind of like joint solutions or use cases have you all worked together on?
Oh, sure. So this is the FlashStack is a joint partnership as Ramnath mentioned earlier. Okay, there is a slide on that. So it's a partnership that we started back in 2015. So 4 years already. Wow. So over a period of time, we have worked on multiple joint solutions. We are at close to 20 now. The latest one was this FlashStack for AI. And over a period of time, we have built solutions for the traditional virtual server infrastructure, VSI, VDI, enterprise applications like SAP, HANA, Oracle Database, Oracle RAC, and so on. And also specialized application reference architectures for multi-site, multi-point deployments, as well as smart capabilities. So as you see here, over a period of time, we grew small with a single CVD. Then within 1 year, we had more than 100 customers now. We are looking at thousands of customers over a period of time across multiple geographies, industries, and customer segments.
Very nice. So many customers out there are already using Pure and Cisco together for so many different use cases across the years. Let's see, next question here. They're asking about the scalability of this solution. Can the architecture scale as the workload scales up?
Very, very good question there, David. So yeah, so this is the initial components within FlashStack AI, as well as the whole architecture, everything put together, it's all scalable. For example, the C480 ML, that itself is a substantial box with 8 NVIDIA Tesla V100 GPUs with 2 CPU slots as well as DIMMs that can go up to 128 gig memory and 24 disks. There is enough CPU and GPU capabilities there. The other thing is that it comes with 400 gig interfaces. for massive amounts of data transfer between boxes. So by leveraging this interconnectivity, you can add up to additional boxes 2, 4, 8, and 16. So you can go up to hundreds of GPUs to scale up your application. And there are similar capabilities on the FlashBlade storage side that maybe Ramnath can talk about. Ramnath?
Yeah, well, thanks, Vish. So that was an excellent summary of how the server and the network actually lets you scale non-disruptively as your workload scales. So when we built FlashBlade, non-disruption was one of the key parameters over here, because when you talk about AI and modern analytics, you're going to have your data grow. It's not a question of if, but rather when. So when we built this product, we wanted to be sure that this you can scale your storage non-disruptively. So FlashBlade lets you scale up to 15 blades of either 17 terabytes or 52 terabytes. And you can actually configure up to 5 of the FlashBlade chassis. So 75 blades, up to 10 petabytes of data under a single namespace. And it's all done by the operating system that runs on the backend, which is called Purity. And the whole point is that it lets you scale non-disruptively as your data set grows.
Excellent. So massive scalability is available from this solution. The next question here is about support. I mean, anytime you have two solutions working together, I'm sure the question comes out about who's going to support it. How does that work?
Right. So this was one of the key drivers for this partnership between Cisco and Pure. So whenever we develop and deliver these validated designs, or what we call as CVDs, one of the key capabilities that our customers and past partners leverage is the solution support that Cisco provides, working very closely with Pure Storage as well as NVIDIA in this specific case for FlashStack for AI. So this is a single point of Cisco provides a single point of support for all the reference architectures and CVDs that we are delivered, and the same thing applies for FlashStack for AI. Cisco takes the call, works closely with Pure Storage as well as NVIDIA and any other technology partners. I talked about a number of software vendors that we work with in one of the slides. Cisco will be the single point of support and makes it easy for our customers to stand up and focus on their business rather than trying to operationally manage it and troubleshoot issues.
Excellent. I love that single point of contact for support. That's very important. You all talked a lot about some very technical stuff here. You know, before we go, what are some recommended resources that the audience should check out to learn more?
Yeah, they should definitely go check out, the resources slide that we had, which calls out flashstack.com. And then as Vish mentioned, we have a CVD, which means that it's already been tested, verified, and we guarantee that, it works just out of box. So yeah, that's another thing that they should look out to and then figure out how they can bring in a modern AI-based infrastructure to their data center. And obviously, Cisco and Pure Storage, we're more than happy to, help transform that.
Awesome. Great presentation, Ramnath and Vish. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us, Dave.
Thank you, guys.
All right, great presentation there from Pure and Cisco. We're going to now announce our final prize winner. While I do that, I'm bringing up this poll question that's right here on the screen. It says, what additional information would you like about the Pure Storage and Cisco solution that you just learned about? And I'll leave that up while I announce this final Amazon $500 gift card. Let's see, this is going to go to one lucky winner on today's event, and that is Kenneth Trant, T-R-A-N-T, from California. Congratulations, Kenneth T. from California. You're the final gift card winner on today's Cloud EcoCast. If you weren't one of today's winners, no worries. Sign up for one of our events at events.actualtechmedia.com. We've got a ton of events coming up on the calendar with some really amazing prizes. So make sure that you join us for one of those events. Now, before we go, I want to remind everyone to make sure you check out our social media channels on YouTube, Facebook, and our 10 on Tech podcast. over in the iTunes Store. Also, subscribe to our LinkedIn channel, the Actual Tech Media LinkedIn channel. It's a link right there at the top right of your audience console. This says IN for LinkedIn, and follow us there for the latest in enterprise technology. If you're a potential sponsor of one of these events and you'd like to present and tell our IT audience about your solution, reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And then speaking of upcoming events, I hope you'll join us on the July 10th Data Protection, Disaster Recovery, and DRAS MegaCast event. That's going to be a big event, a really great event. So I hope that you'll join us. You can register at events.actualtechmedia.com. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the Cloud Solutions EcoCast event. I hope that you learned a lot, and have a great day. See you next time.